Good evening, everyone. My name is John Rogers. I'm the chair of the Westwood Conservation Commission. I'd like to call the Conservation Commission's hearing for the notice of intent, as well as the stormwater bylaw filing by the applicant. Call that hearing to order.
And my name is Dave Atkins, and I will be acting as the chair of the planning board this evening. We have a unique situation here where we have both of our boards meeting together. And I will now call this meeting to order. And John, do you want to go through the standard issues there?
Yeah, let me go through it, a little script we prepared just to make sure that we're sort of all on the same page here on some details. But tonight's meeting includes two separate hearings, but we're going to hold them concurrently. We will discuss things together. There are certainly some relationships between the planning board's approval and the Conservation Commission's, some overlap potentially, and certainly some meshing of those. This is on the Islington Center redevelopment project. It's a continued hearing for the planning board. It is the first hearing of the Conservation Commission's on this project. Though the focus of the planning board is on zoning issues, the site, architecture, and impacts to abutters, the Conservation Commission, again, the first meeting, this is about their notice of intent application relative to wetlands issue, both under the State Wetlands Protection Act and the town's bylaw, as well as the stormwater system under the town's stormwater bylaw. And those are the areas that the Conservation Commission has responsibility over. So we're going to have a discussion tonight. At the end of tonight's hearing, each board will make their own determination on action for next steps. It seems likely there will be potentially a continuation of the planning board's hearing, and it's the potential the Conservation Commission may do the same thing or conclude tonight.
So just to kind of summarize the planning board role here is that we are continuing the hearing so that we can take in new information about the project. Most of that is going to be related to the Conservation Commission's discussion tonight, but we will be hearing an update on any new information related to this project. We have a meeting scheduled for April 10th, where we will most likely continue this hearing to April 10th. And at that meeting, we will be taking probably the last new information. Ideally, nothing has changed after this. At that point, the planning board would begin its deliberation process. And that's a process by which we go through the special permit process to review findings of fact for all the things that are necessary before we can grant a special permit. So again, that discussion, we'll be doing that April 10th. But this is an opportunity tonight to receive the information, all the latest information about this project. And I'll ask that all that information will be posted on the town website, so that anyone who wants to read all these long memos that we are reading will be able to do so in advance of our April 10th meeting.
Thanks, Dave. So just to be clear also, all meetings are recorded by the Westwood Media Center. And if there's anyone that would like to record the meeting, is there anyone else that is wanting to record this meeting? Just so we're all clear on that. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers now so we don't get those interruptions. Please do check and make sure if you think you might have, make sure that you have in fact. The meeting will follow the agenda that we have. I think there's extra copies out on the back table. So we'll be following that agenda, and it will be civil, and everybody will be treated respectfully. The format of the meeting will be, when an item is called, we'll get the applicant up here to describe the latest in a summary way. Again, if we want to not go over issues that a lot of folks already know well enough, and really focus on sort of new information, distinctions between what was part of the proposal in the past, recognizing, of course, that most of the commissioners have not been following the process in detail, as have others. So we will hear the applicant's description of the project, summary of the project. We'll go to staff and ask for any clarifications they have. Go to the town's consultant for their review comments. Again, toward primarily issues germane to the Conservation Commission. And after we've gone through that process, on the Conservation Commission, our typical is to go to each one of the commissioners to see what questions, comments they have. I would conclude that process, and then we would presumably make sure there's none outstanding from the planning board, and we'd look for if people wish to weigh in, make comments, ask questions, welcome those comments again. And we will try to keep those as short and sweet as we can and on point, and just ask that folks know that we do have sort of a couple of different things that are going on in this project relative to the planning board in comparison to the Conservation Commission. We really want to try and make sure we fleshed out all of the issues germane to the Conservation Commission tonight, as there will be a chance. This may be our one chance to get through those issues.
The other thing I'd like to remind everyone to speak into the microphone because as it's being recorded, if it doesn't go into the microphone, it doesn't end up on the tape. So when people rise to speak, they should identify themselves. And just reminding the board members here too that to speak into the microphones.
So with that all having been said, I think we could just go into the presentation by the applicant as to a summary overview, particularly focused on just the overall description of the project, but particularly changes that have happened in the last, I don't know if it's last couple of weeks, last month or so, that will make sure we're all on the same page.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Peter Zacher. I'm an attorney from Dedham. I'm here on behalf of and representing Petruziello Properties, LLC, who is the applicant before you. Also here tonight, sitting in the front row, is Giorgio Petruziello, who is the principal of Petruziello Properties, LLC. We have Sue Harrington from GCG, who is the civil engineer, and we'll be primarily speaking on the issues that are germane to the Conservation Commission, as well as changes from the last time. Mike McKay is at the end. Mike is with McKay Architects. He is the project architect. And we have Ken Cram with us, who is with Bayside Engineering, who is the traffic engineer on this project. Clearly, we've been before the planning board a number of nights. First evening with the Conservation Commission. And so we would ask the Conservation Commission, as we're making the presentation, if you want us to go back, we will, in terms of some of the basics. What we really hope to do tonight, as was stated, was to bring everybody up to date on what has transpired since our last meeting with the Planning Board, in terms of how we responded to some additional comments that we had gotten from both the Planning Board as well as from the Planning Board's peer review consultants. Want to make one quick note, which is probably the major change. I'm going to take everybody's scene. We've had a lot of discussion at the last meeting as to the CVS and the size of the CVS. I got up here and made a nice speech about the economics of the project, and that at that time we thought, at the end of our negotiations with CVS in terms of what they would do. And specifically, we had a building of approximately 13,000 square feet proposed for the School Street side after a meeting that Giorgio Petruziello had with a number of the abutters. He left there with the impression that one of the primary issues, the primary concerns of the neighborhood was the size of that CVS. So he had worked with them, and at the last meeting we presented a smaller footprint of the CVS, but reintroduced the drive-through. Everybody remembers the first package that we had sent in had a 13,000 plus or minus CVS with the drive-through. The drive-through was then eliminated. When we came back to the smaller building, the drive-through had come back. Tonight you're going to see, and I'm probably the most surprised person in this room, a smaller version of the CVS, 9,990 square feet of footprint, which has eliminated the drive-through. I want to give my client a lot of credit. He went back to the drawing board with CVS. I got to give CVS some credit. They gave in on the drive-through because my client, given the speech I gave last time, gave in on some of the economic issues, basically a much reduced rent, and CVS has agreed to go forward with the project that you'll see tonight with a 990,000 square foot footprint for the CVS with the drive-through eliminated. So having said that, probably makes most sense to have Sue Harrington go first to give the overview of where we're at and to point out the changes that have been done, as well as some of the comments or responses that we've given to the peer reviewer. Sue?
Hi, my name is Sue Harrington, GCG Associates. I'm representing Petruzziello Properties in the redevelopment of Islington Center, where this is a joint hearing between the planning board, who we've seen, this is our fifth time now, where this is the first for the Conservation Commission. I'll give a super brief overview of what's being proposed here at the intersection. As you see on the screen here, this shows the proposed conditions. This is Washington Street. This is north over here, School Street, East Street. We've divided this for scale on future plans. This is the School Street side, and we're calling this the East Street side. What's existing out here now is, this is the existing CVS building that's being renovated. Where you see this new multi-use building that's proposed, this is where the ICC is, this is where the library is. The ICC is being raised with some new community space being built over on the School Street side. And the library, which is currently located over here, is being picked up and relocated over here. Each of these will provide two levels, two-level library and two-level community space. Over here is, what's currently over here is the municipal parking area, for reference. This is where the cafe, deli, and barber shop is. There's a little vacant tailor shop up here, a house that will be raised. This is the location that we're talking about, the new CVS. On previous plans, this was about 13,000 square feet. It came all the way up to the back, and the roadway was pushed over to the western property line. And this is showing the new configuration with the reduced size building that Peter was just talking about. This up here, on future plans, it will be cut off right about here. This is the wetland resource area that we'll be talking about for the conservation issues tonight. You'll see a 100-foot buffer line that comes to right about there, and a 35-foot buffer line about here, and you can see that better on future plans. So this is the School Street side here, and as you can see, this is the wetland resource area that we were just talking about. I'll jump right into how that affects with conservation. This CVS building was 13,000 square feet, so it came up to about there, and we've since pulled it down to the east, and in turn we're able to pull this roadway down towards it and pull this substantially out of the wetland resource area. And this back parking line was also pulled out of the wetlands. This wetland line that you've seen on plans up until this point were delineated by Wetlands LM last November, and we've since, our second filing of these plans, we met with Karen Catroni the conservation agent out on site, and this wetland line was expanded right here, so it comes out a little bit more, and down here. This is an intermittent stream with an outlet pipe. So this watershed actually expands this whole area from the street that's up here and the street that's back there. So this is a low point depressed area. What I'd like to point out in this entrance roadway is that we previously had a little bit less than a 20-foot buffer back here from the adjacent residential property line, and it's now 30 feet from that property line, which the bylaw is 20. And there's also a fence. There's an existing property fence that we're not touching right there, and there's one expanding out to the street that's 6 feet in height for adequate screening. Some trees are added right there. For the buffers, this is the 100-foot buffer, which would trigger a notice of intent filing with the Mass DEP. And Westwood also has their own 35-foot buffer line, which is an alteration buffer. And what you need to prove if you're doing anything within that 35-foot is that you're in some way improving the wetland area. So we have two major things that we're doing to improve this wetland area. The first thing is the removal of invasive species. There were two major species that were identified with preliminary comments from the Conservation Commission. We were asked to come up with a remediation plan for that. So for those two major species and one or two other sporadic species that were identified, we'll be doing a cut and dab method. We don't recommend spraying in this small of area because it will pretty much kill all of the plants, and we don't want to do that. So cut and dab is you cut it at the roots, you basically paint it with like Roundup, and what the Conservation Commission has asked is that we replace some of those plants with bushes. There's a few different wetland species that we're proposing in those locations at 10-foot spacing around any prominent trees that are left. And what they say is with removal of invasive species, you set the clock back about 20 years on a wetland area. So we consider that to be a substantial improvement. And the second improvement that we propose is this. There's an outlet pipe over here that is about half full of fill, sediment, debris, and we're proposing to hand dig that out, give it a new riprap outlet that will allow the water to flow as it's supposed to. For the stormwater, the stormwater design on this side of the street, the intention at any outlet on a site from pre-development conditions to post-development conditions is that you can't increase any of the flow, any of the peak flows or peak volumes. So what we have is an underground infiltration system that's designed to actually hold where you see that this is a lot of additional pavement, not necessarily up at the front because that's where the municipal parking area is currently, but this is a lot of additional pavement back here. So what we have is this underground infiltration system that is supposed to control or hold the 2-year, 10-year, and I think the 25-year storm as well before even going out to the wetlands. We have a few catch basins that treat the stormwater. This is a treatment device. And the outlet is just an overflow, so it's not designed to actually outlet to the wetlands. At the front of the site, there's actually a reduction in pavement. The way that we designed it, most of it goes to this system back here. So up at front, we don't have any volume, any detention volume. It's treated in these catch basins to a storm scepter, which is basically an oil grit separator. Takes any contaminants out before it's discharged to the town system. For the parking on this side, what we've done, you know this is the municipal parking area over here. It currently holds 32 spaces, and we've matched that 32 spaces. This is a property line that will come right out and we'll have easement across. This will be owned by the town. This will be owned by Petruzziello Properties, leased by CBS. And we have 32 spaces to match the existing over here, and CVS will have 40, which is sized pretty perfectly for a 10,000 square foot building. I'll move right over to the East Street side before going back to truck movements and fire truck movements on the other side. For the East Street side, we don't have any resource areas over here, but for stormwater, we consider this a redevelopment project, so you improve the site to the maximum extent practicable. And what we've done, there isn't really any good existing drainage over here, so what we've done for the proposed, we significantly reduce the runoff on this side of the site. About half of this roof runoff goes into this underground detention. Half of it, and this whole building, will go into this underground detention. So that will hold the 2 and 10-year storms going off-site so that we're not flooding this pipe down on East Street. Currently, there's just a couple of catch basins in the parking area, and this one is, I'm not sure if it's a leaching catch basin, but it's completely full, so it's not currently intercepting any drainage. So now we have it redesigned. So this is just an overflow. This collects this portion. It will come down, go off-site, and the things that are just getting caught in the catch basins will go to another storm scepter, as we had on the other side of the street, for treatment before going out to East Street. So that's pretty much it for conservation and stormwater. So this shows fire truck turning movements on the School Street side. This is designed using the Westwood Ladder 1, which is the largest fire truck they have in Westwood. It's probably 7 to 10 feet longer than a typical one that I would use to run for this scenario. And this plan shows these trucks coming in. Well, this one's going out two different ways coming in, going out that way. We show it coming in from School Street, show that it can get behind the building, it can get up against the CVS. In running these, we opened up the radii a little bit to gain more access. This has been approved by the Westwood Fire Department. This is the same side of the street. The fire department, before approving, they asked that we show them coming from the Pine Street direction. So these all are coming in from Pine Street. This shows a WB50 truck, which will be the CVS size delivery truck. It's about 55 feet long. They would come from south, most likely take a left on School Street and take a right into the parking lot. They can back into this loading zone that's over here, and they are able to turn. Taking a right south isn't as ideal. Taking a left, they can do it perfectly. And just to talk about the deliveries at CVS, because I know that was a big concern for a lot of the residents. We have spoken with the CVS design engineer, and what the delivery schedules are is there's one major delivery for CVS per week, and they will schedule that at off-peak hours, and then one truck scheduled per day for other things, cosmetics, milk. So it would just be one truck per day, any given day, all scheduled off-peak hours. This is the largest truck that you will see. It's the CVS truck, so it will be once a week. Every other truck that comes through here is smaller. And we didn't even analyze it coming down from School Street. We verified that that's not the route that they're going to be taking through Pine Street. These are fire truck turning movements on the East Street side. This has also been approved by the Westwood Fire Department. And this is a WB50 truck. It's not, we don't have any kind of delivery schedule, but we analyzed it using the same size truck on the East Street side. This is a loading zone over here. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have, do you have further?
Yeah, we have Ken Cram.
Ken Cram from Bayside Engineering.
Thank you. As Sue said, I'm Ken Cram from Bayside Engineering. We prepared the voluminous traffic impact and access study, which has been reviewed by the town's peer review consultant, Beta, and we submitted on March 28th, end of last week, responses to the final comments, which primarily focused on a few little details that they asked us to clarify, which we have done, and they've signed off on in their final comment letter. But the big thing that is in there and will be worked out probably during the permitting process overall is the eventual signal timing and changes that we're going to do. We provided 3 options, 3 different cycle lengths for optimization of the traffic signal, both with and without the providing a southbound left turn clearance space, which creates some problems that Greg and I both agree on, but we wanted to have the board to have all the information before we make a final decision on what the eventual timings will be. But I think between the town's engineer, and Beta, that we can work that out and get a final signal timing. And so, per their last comment letter, all the traffic issues have been adequately addressed.
Hello, my name is Michael McKay. I'm the project architect. We have, I guess I could do a quick overview for Conservation Commission of the renderings that we prepared. We did make some changes from the last meeting. So we were asked to prepare sort of bird's eye view of from 4 different angles. So this is the existing condition shown in the CVS library, ICC, and the fire station off in the far right. This is a proposed view. The changes that we made, I'll try to highlight. I don't think they really show on this one, but the CVS building is significantly smaller. We did have time to redesign that building. This may show a drive-through, so the site may not be completely accurate, but I think at that point there was still a drive-through. So this is a view showing the renovated CVS building would be renovated as a retail with the MMO in the lower level, access from the back, and the dry cleaner building would also be renovated. So this complete building would be renovated, and then this is the new mixed-use building with 18 condominiums on the second and third floor and retail on the first floor, and underground parking. So it's underground. The parking is accessed from the rear. Another view from East Street, looking towards the Cafe Diva, the existing Cafe Diva. So this is showing the existing ICC and how it extends out onto School Street. I'm sorry, I said East Street. Sorry. This is a view. One of the things, I guess, the changes. The last rendering, we showed trees along the side, and we removed those. And now, guess what? We have room to put the trees. So Susan has shown 4 trees along that side. So this rendering was prepared after the redesign. So there will be 4 trees along the side here. We took them off, and now they're going back. but the rendering showed them, so the previous rendering was right, this one's wrong. But this shows the CVS building that is smaller, with reduced size. This is the entrance to the lower parking level, and this is the entrance, pedestrian entrance. There's one of two. There's also one on Washington Street for the residents. This is an overall view again, just from a different angle. And this is our design showing the different buildings and the impact. One of the other suggestions was to bring the spire closer to the edge so it would be more visible. And we did that on all of the renderings and on the architectural drawings, the elevations. So we have moved it forward. We do think it was a good suggestion. It works much better. Another view, this is just a kind of a big overview of the whole area. The mixed-use building in the lower left-hand corner, the one that was recently completed, the renovated post office building and fire station and so on. So it's just a different angle of it. This is a street view of the existing ICC and CVS building on the far left. This is the proposed, and this also reflects the changes in some trees that were removed, and now we'll be back with, we've added trees. I think in the rendering we showed some. We didn't want to block the building completely, but there will be a series of street trees on both sides of of Washington Street, and those are shown accurately on the site plan. This is a view from East Street looking towards the playground on the far right, and our proposed slide has been moved forward. Just a comment from last meeting, we have shifted the building. The design was to get the new mixed use further away from the street. Two elevations of the reduced CVS. It's approximately 30 feet shorter, close to the same width, but 30 feet shorter. So it's just a more compact building. The roof line gets, because of that, the gables and ridges, everything's down. So it's significantly more compact building is the design. The only changes here is we moved, the previous design had the spire here, so we moved it approximately 8 feet closer. So it's almost in the exact, it is in the exact spot of the existing. And the same view, just showing different views of that. I think that's it.
Yes,
Maybe what we do now is ask the town's review consultant to come up and give a sort of summary of their conclusions and again, just ask that you know, while there are probably some changes that need to be mentioned relative to what the planning board has looked at before, and you know, those comments were really, Conservation Commission is very interested mostly on those issues related to wetlands and stormwater, and that, you know, some of the other items that may or may not need to be discussed tonight, certainly not by the commission, are things like traffic turns and, you know, planting might have some relevance, but geometrics, other things besides stormwater, sewer, lighting, things like that are not so much in, or not at all in the Conservation Commission's purview.
My name is Phil Paradis. I'm with Beta Group, peer review consultant for this project. With me is Greg Lucas, traffic consultant with Beta Group, and Mike Sinesi with DSK Architects. So I'm actually pretty excited. No surprises today. And we actually had a very productive meeting. We had a tech meeting last week in which we worked out a lot of the kind of logistics, and we made some changes, which I think were very productive. One of the major changes was the relocated parking. This used to be 2 bays wide, and we recommend that they take one bay out take the parking lot and pull the whole thing probably about 18 feet in, which reduced a lot of paving area, pull the project away from the wetland, and also because, as was stated already, because the building is shorter, this all pulled in some too. So that all provided, I would say, a significant improvement relative to the wetlands and also to the buffer zone to the residential neighborhood. So we've been reviewing this project in iterations, and I think we finally caught up with the plan as it laid out. The stormwater system, we go to the other side first. We go to so this one was a little more challenging, this site, because right now it's all developed right now. I think there's going to be a slight increase in impervious area, but as Sue mentioned, there's virtually no stormwater management system, and I think it just runs out to the street. So the challenge on this side of the site, though, is, you know, they have fairly shallow infiltration systems. The soils underneath are all A soils in this area. It's granular gravel, so highly conducive to infiltration. However, the groundwater is pretty high as you go down here, so that's why these are up at the top, you know, as high as you can get it, and it only pulls in this driveway to the infiltration system. The lower, because of the elevation here, I'm not able to get it into an infiltration system. So I think they've done as well as they could. The system now can handle the 10-year storm event coming out, which is a vast improvement. Along with the infiltration systems, they do have a storm scepter in this area to provide TSS removal along with the deep sump catch basins. So we're pretty happy about that side. On this side, as Sue mentioned, you know, this is a much bigger system. It's a deeper system as well. The soils again are very good, and virtually, I want to say at least 67 to 75% of the site is directed toward that infiltration system. And the infiltration system can handle, without any discharge, up a 25-year storm. So you're not going to see a lot of runoff, and it will have virtually no impact on the drainage system that outlets at the wetland. So again, and then they proposed a storm scepter for the remaining area, the remaining pavement area, in which you'll be treated before discharge to the street system. So a summary of the 10 standards. They're not proposing any untreated new outfalls to wetlands. They're reducing the peak rate of runoff significantly, especially on this side. They're providing recharge. All the roof water and the whole project is going to be directed to recharge systems. They're providing 80% TSS removal or greater. The high intensity use of, well, at least it was when we had a 13,000 square foot building, meaning that there were greater than 1,000 trips a day at this parking lot. I don't know if that, I didn't verify if that's the case today, but it would meet that standard relative to the BMPs required for high intensity use. And then, what's next? There's no critical areas. Redevelopment, they've met the standards as best. Yeah, I think they've met all the standards, right? Erosion and sediment controls. They're providing a line of hay bales around this. They're providing silt sacks for the basins. They're providing a construction, stone construction entrance. so they're meeting the basics of that. They provided a draft stormwater pollution prevention plan, so we're gonna ask that they have a condition that would provide, that they would submit a signed copy, completed copy. I think we have one comment about the O&M plan, that they need to provide a map with the plan and a form, inspection form, so that so the owner would know where all the facilities are and be able to inspect them and provide the town with their reports. They provided an illicit discharge statement indicating that there will be no illicit discharges to this town system. I think that's it. Relative stormwater. Any questions?
Do we want, should we address the stormwater issues, or should we get through all of the review, including wetlands, and try and do all of that, and then we can sort of go through all of the issues from each one of the commissioners who go from there?
Okay.
Is that fair?
We didn't review the wetland, any of the wetland issues.
Okay, so we were thinking that if your review sort of has covered all of the stormwater issues completely, unless you feel that there's some other issues you folks need to have addressed, I think what we could do is next jump into staff comments. There's a few updates that we could provide, including Karen's comments about observations of the site as our agent, and we'll go from there.
I think Brian has a question.
I just went for Roger, just to make sure that Roger can, I just wanted to make sure that the mic was close enough.
All right, so can we go to Abby and Karen? Are there any comments you have on where we are, so that we make sure we've addressed as best we can on this first look at wetlands and stormwater?
I went out to the site on the 9th, March 9th, and met Sue Harrington and the wetland delineator. We discussed the line that was delineated, and I asked him to move a few of the flags. The plants in the site were, the plants in the area that I asked him to move the flags were upper plants, but the topology of the area and then the soils looked more hydrant. So they did move the line, which provided more wetland area. We discussed the invasive species removal, which will be done. I've asked them to provide us with an invasive species removal plan, so we'll know exactly what kind of chemicals they're going to use and what methods. I discussed with Sue replanting right away. The plan says, it states that they're going to wait 2 years to see if the native plants grow back, but my recommendation is that that be done right away so the invasives do not come back. Also, we're requesting native plants for all the plantings. Anybody have any questions?
So, Abby, did you have any clarifications or updates?
Just a couple updates to the planning board since your last meeting. You did, or any packet in the last couple of days, you received, as Sue mentioned, a memo from the fire chief approving the revised plans with the updated turn templates that you received. You did also receive a note from the Dedham Westwood Water District that they've reviewed and approved the revised plans. And then the Islington Center Task Force did meet last night, and they, I see a couple members are here tonight if they'd like to add anything. But they did take a vote on the project, and they recommended the planning board support for the project with a suggested condition that there be no right turns by trucks out of the CVS parking lot, so that trucks cannot turn right onto School Street, and recommended speed bumps in the parking lot for the School Street side, so that to tear or eliminate any cut-through traffic.
All right, well, Dave, anything?
So do we have everything? I guess that's the question for the applicant. If we have all the, we have the final proposal now. It sounds like we are. Are there any questions from planning board members at this time?
So for my benefit, because it was a little confusing about the wetlands, exactly what pipes, what water is going into and out of the wetlands now, through what pipe, and then before, and then the after, what will the water be going in and out of that wetland? Developer or?
So this is the delineated wetland area, and any of the flags that are down here are an intermittent stream. As this was analyzed, this is a low point from basically this street up here and that street back there. So this whole watershed area was analyzed as to what exactly is flowing into this depression right here. This area here was also contributing to the wetlands, and where we've replaced it with mostly pavement, what we have is this underground infiltration system which will collect all of that for the 2, 10, and 25-year storms. And this is an overflow, and that was designed based on a slight reduction in any outlet from this area going to this outlet pipe right here. That pipe is a 10-inch clay pipe going from the tip of the stream right there into a catch basin on School Street. That is the only outlet from this whole area, so it was analyzed at that point. So there's a reduction in peak flows and in volume going out to that pipe.
So you're replacing, your hand replacing that pipe from the wetland to the street?
We're not proposing to replace that existing pipe that's going out. The only problem that we see with it as it exists is that it's half full of sediment, fill, anything that's just trickled down into that area. So we're hand digging out the area at the mouth and replacing it with dumped riprap. I think it's like 8-inch dumped riprap. So it should provide a nice outlet for that pipe and a little bit extra treatment before it goes out.
So at what point would the water actually ever flow out through there? And what kind of storm or how often?
Water would flow out from there in any storm event. I would say that's probably the most important thing about this wetlands back here is that it's a depression for this whole area. So eventually, anything that didn't infiltrate through these soils, and as Phil said, they're all A soils out there, which means you have maximum infiltration in this area, but any runoff that you do get from this whole block basically goes to this area. So you're always going to have flow out that pipe. But what we've shown is that this increased impervious area doesn't contribute to that.
So I expect that we're going to get into maybe some more of the nuts and bolts of the wetland areas as we go into the Conservation Commission's questions and comments. But are there any others on the planning board side, any issues that we need to make sure? I do suggest we'll probably get into some of those issues as we go through. And maybe in the interest of time, unless there's something else that folks suggest, I think if we could just start down the line on the Conservation Commission, start with that. By the way, individual commissioner, if you sort of had all your questions already answered, then you're fine with it as is, and want to wait for further comments and questions, I'm fine with that as well. But why don't we start, Madam President? Do you have any?
So I do have a couple of questions. I haven't been to the site unfortunately, and I saw on the area it looks like it's wooded. Can you describe the nature of the existing wetland and the type of existing plants?
I'd like to defer to Karen on the actual plants that are out there. I know the invasive species.
And maybe I could even cut to the chase, because I've been out to the site, and it is a highly degraded existing wetland. And I guess I can't stress that enough. I mean, it's really a mess out there with invasive species, with large trees, some of which may have just been recently, partially destroyed by snow and windstorms that we've had. And but there's a lot of rubble in there. There's a lot of trash, so to talk about the plant species, there's not much good to the wetlands, so it presents a tremendous opportunity for improvement at both the plant level, as well as, I think, from a hydraulic standpoint, from a stormwater management and treatment standpoint.
And so I did look at the proposed plant list. I think they all seem to be native species. I think there's one of them, the Latin name was not correct. I also looked at the landscaping plan for the CVS parking lot, and the only comment that I have is they're proposing ginkgo trees within the buffer zone of the wetland. I think that should be a native species there as well. Maybe red maple, maybe pinoc, things like that, things that are appropriate for the wetland.
Board Conservation Commission. Phil, I have a couple of questions for you in regards to the stormwater. There are more points of clarification. So one of the points you made was that you thought it met standards. I just want to make sure that as part of your review, you did look at this and determine that it meets all the bylaws and the standards that we are requiring for a development such as this. You seem to be questioning it when you presented, so I just want to be clear.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. It didn't occur to me until after that this would be classified as a redevelopment project. So, but they do meet all the standards.
Okay, and then point of clarification also, you looked at it based on a bigger footprint, correct? So you hadn't gotten, which is fine. I think you indicated that your review was based on the 13,000 plus or minus square foot.
So that's relative to the high intensity use parking lot, whether or not there was 1,000 trips per day based on parking. So
okay. So
that was the only issue. We did have the calculations, updated calculations last week.
And then just, if you could go to East Street for just 1 second. So just to clarify for me, the infiltration basin right now is just going to be picking up by the driveway that comes in down by the cleaners there, in that flow area.
So this infiltration basin takes, like Sue said, most of the roof, this roof and half of this roof, and as well as the driveway that can get to this, because elevation-wise, anything lower makes it not
right. Right, and so currently there's no drainage that goes to East Street. So is that correct?
So there's two catch basins right, I think right here, and anyway, right here, they're way too small. It's, it can't accommodate.
Yeah, so there is a catch basin. There is a catch basin right here. It was too full to see if there's any pipe directing or if it goes anywhere. There's a catch basin right here, a catch basin right here, and both of those go into a drain manhole right here, and that would be the same outlet point that we analyzed pre and post.
So pre and post, and there's no problems downstream of that in relationship to flooding, and the increase of flow wouldn't be a problem?
So the idea with this design is that it actually significantly decreases the flow going to that manhole and catch basin. It actually, this whole roof, and this whole area here is designed to hold the 10-year storm.
Okay, thanks.
I have no questions at this time.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to comment that I do find that it's a substantial improvement. I have been to the site many times, and the wetland resource area is a mess, as the chairman indicated. Removing the invasives is part of what we do, and that's definitely a positive. The other thing, replacing it with natives is something that I was interested in, as well as digging out that pipe, which is pretty much clogged. From a storm water management, like most developments, this is certainly a tremendous benefit to the entire area. There's hardly any storm water in the CBS area. I've been there and seen the runoff. So speaking as a member of the board, I'm very much in favor of this. Speaking as a resident of the town, I'm also very much in favor of the project overall. My law firm is in Dedham. The Petruzzios have over, I think there's about half a dozen of these type buildings in the town. As far as maintaining the native species and stuff like that, they take great care to keep their properties looking good, and they're very attentive to the plantings, which is important to me. So I think you've done a great job designing it. I think you've done a great job commenting on it. So as a member of this board, I'm very much in favor.
RJ Shear. My questions are really just, we've discussed it in other projects before. I'm always worried about the snow removal, where it's going to be stored on site. Have you guys addressed that in any way?
So with the current conditions on site, there isn't really much area to put the snow storage. That is one of the things that Beta has asked for as part of the O&M plan that will show the proposed drainage structures out there and how we'll maintain them. They've asked us to circle off snow storage areas, so that's something that we're looking into and considering right now. They did ask that we could add as much buffer along the sides everywhere possible. And in the winter, the snow can be pushed into, this is all a grassed area. So everywhere that you see adjacent to parking areas that's green, and you can see this darker green does show that there's plantings proposed in each of these areas. But most of the plants actually all of the plants that aren't trees that are proposed in these areas are meant to be planted next to parking areas, salt-resistant plants. So that's this side of the street. On the side of the street there isn't too much in the way of snow storage, but we do have this little area back here. We have the door right here. We don't have any doors back there, so you can put snow storage back there. With some of the recent changes, this parking area was pulled forward about 8 feet, and we left the wall in the back where it is, so we do have about 8 feet of snow storage back there. And I know that snow storage isn't something that you like to see in a wetland area. This is however left graded uphill, so if it did just end up getting put over here, it would drain down back onto the parking lot and be treated with the rest of all this stuff.
Anything else? No, I mean, I think we should consider removal of that. I mean, it's clearly not enough area.
Yeah.
For some.
Yeah, sure looks like you're not going to have enough. Certainly, if you get a repeat of a couple of winters ago, there's a lot of parking spaces that get taken up by, even this past winter, that get taken up by snow storage. So could be that it works at a convenient time when not all those parking spaces are used.
Yeah, so maybe I just go through, I think that is an item that needs to be addressed. I want to focus my comments on the wetland and the opportunity that exists there to not just remove invasives and, sort of put in a couple plants, but to really do a job of significantly enhancing that wetland. And that would not be very much different than I think what's been discussed, but instead of just trying to recreate the existing footprint that exists out there, to draw essentially a new perimeter of that wetland that's at the base of the slopes, which I think is hydrologically connected and could be made to be an active part of that wetland, a more vibrant, more effective stormwater management facility, as well as a place for wetlands, for wildlife habitat, and other interests. And in doing that, I'm not sure what the best form of showing that is, where it's now this sort of, Big Dipper upside down there, that a lot of that area could be squared off almost to the property lines that are shown up on the, what's that, going to the west of the site, to the base of the slope, extends actually almost up to the property line in the upper right there, and have all of those areas planted with wetlands vegetation, and in that area. We've got sort of a narrow channel. I don't think, short of asking for the elimination of some parking spaces, that there's much to do about the narrow part, but that whole sort of handle of the frying pan there, going over towards School Street, the grades are mostly ready for that all to be an extension of that wetland. And to, instead of just leaving that existing pipe that seems a little problematic, is to cut that pipe back some 10, 20 feet back from School Street and convert that whole area into an active wetland that also would filter flow that comes from the wetland, from the side hill seeps, potentially from some pump discharges, yard discharges. Anyway, it would be a much more functional wetland from a vegetation and a stormwater management standpoint. And toward the issue of snow storage, although in most cases we wouldn't want snow to be melting, to be poured into essentially a wetland, I personally would not see an issue if there were a way to sort of level off from where those dumpster enclosure is. Behind that, right now, there's a bit of a ridge that's shown on the plan. If you were to flatten that area out, you've got a lot of room for snow storage, and for that then could melt and go in either direction, either go toward the pavement and enter the infiltration system, or go toward the wetland. I personally think that the enhancements I just talked about would treat a lot of that water, both from a volume standpoint as well as from a quality standpoint, and that could be a net add. And by the way, we do have a substantial amount of the proposed pavement in the buffer zone, which we really consider that to be an area that we don't want to see any impact. We don't want to see any development in. However, I think that we can get a net benefit by doing some of those improvements and allowing that work within the buffer zone, and that the snow storage suggestion I just had may provide an additional benefit in addressing some of the functional needs for stormwater or for snow storage on this side of the site. Certainly not going to get it all addressed, but at least it's got somewhere, and it effectively treats some of that runoff that occurs from those snow piles for a long time. So, to me, there's an opportunity to get all of those things done with some additional investment on the developer's part, that would need to, I would also point out that any of that work, just as with the removal of the invasive vegetation, would want to be done as the first activity at the site. Get that going early. Pulling out the invasives is a challenging job, even in the way that Sue has described it. We're likely not to get it all. It's likely to regrow if we don't make sure that there's native species we want to survive, make sure they do survive. Give that some time. So just to reiterate, saying do all of what I just talked about, trying to do that as a first activity on the construction site, such that we have a chance to see how well it's doing after the first year, make any adjustments, so that potentially by the second year of construction, it's all in good shape. We have an opportunity to even improve that piece of the work, including what I expect would be most of the stormwater system, and avoid what we've had on some other projects recently. We waited until after the fact and it became a problem from a scheduling standpoint to make sure all of that was effective, including the wetland that we're trying to create some enhancements to a very degraded system. So I guess that's it, and maybe look to the applicant to respond to any of those comments, and I may just jump into some stormwater after that.
I'm getting up because you're not allowed to agree to anything. We actually think those are excellent suggestions. I know we have a continued meeting. Hopefully between now and then we can provide you with the additional information to incorporate the suggestions that we made. Mr. Petruzziello thinks they're great suggestions.
So,
can I
go ahead, Phil.
Can I just comment on a couple of them? One was, so your intent is to expand this wetland. Is the topography here goes up pretty steep. Actually, this is a retaining wall to help with the grading. So I don't know that extending the wetland that way or that way is possible.
Yeah, we don't need to get into the exacts of the geometry, but no, it's a good point. I think it really wants to be at the base of the slope around that area. You're right, it doesn't extend that far.
I think you could do it here and, in this area as well.
Yes, exactly. Yep, so I think there's a way to do that frankly, without any real grading on the micro grading and plantings, and then watching those plantings and make sure that they thrive and don't just survive after the basis. So yeah. The only other things that I guess I'd reiterate what Phil said earlier is the need to make sure that we have an O&M plan that's, that these systems are inspected. It's relatively easy to see these infiltration systems get clogged with sand, from road sand, after a big winter, so we want to make sure that we've got inlets, and I haven't gone through every one of the details, but my expectation is that sediment would get collected in catch basin sumps before it gets into the infiltration under the pavement, and that as long as that's cleaned out, or at least inspected on an annual basis, cleaned out, might only be every 5 years, but it does need to be cleaned out on some frequent basis so that the system continues to function. It doesn't go to what you're saying, pipes, that are catch basins that are completely full of material.
So there are isolator rows wherever a catch basin is directed to the infiltration. So that would collect the sediment.
And the only other thing I would say that I would give 3 cheers for the applicant is that my pet peeve that the constructed, stabilized construction entrances that usually get mentioned, the point is not an entrance, it's the exiting of construction vehicles from sites that tracks dirt that then washes into catch basins and goes into streams. So, to your credit, in the stormwater pollution prevention plan here, it says construct stabilized construction exits. Wasn't consistent through all the documents, but I'd ask that you make sure that that's consistent. The whole point of putting those in place is to prevent tracking of mud from the construction site, and to make sure that, you know, all the construction vehicles are using that as well. So those would be comments that I have. So with that, unless there's other comments, questions, I think if we have anyone from the audience that wishes to make any comments or ask questions, you're welcome to come up and identify yourself. Here, come on up and just give your name and address. Make sure you have a microphone so we can hear you clearly. Is there one over there?
Yes.
Okay.
Not sure if it's on. My name is Jeff Boston, and my wife and I own the property directly behind the existing CVS store right now.
Yeah.
There is a Stratford Place, and that is a problem with water. There was a catch basin put in there several years back that was supposed to take care of that issue, and it hasn't. And that water backs up within 10 feet of my building and floods the cellar. And so that's critical to me that that's taken care of. And also to the snow removal. I'm glad you brought that up because that was my second issue. That's going to be a big issue because right now they're pushing all that snow that's existing back there up against the fence that we have there, and every year the fence gets broken. And plus there's huge piles right at the end of Stratford Place. My tenants don't have a place to put the trash. So that's an issue right there. The third issue is Stratford Place, the road. That is a terrible road. If something can be done with that, I think you'd make a big improvement right there to this. I don't know what the 4 or 5 houses that are there now are going to do during the construction and even afterwards, how they're going to get through. That's basically it.
Okay, thank you. And so I think the Conservation Commission and the Stormwater Bylaw has some responsibility to make sure that we have a stormwater system that addresses both the flooding issue, which, you know, I think from what we've seen, you know, addresses some of that, but the snow removal and plowing, yeah, they can be quite destructive, especially if you've got multiple storms and they're really trying to clear up some space. They tend to push it pretty hard and far.
Because the slope of that slopes back right to our property.
Yes.
And that could be a good foot of water in there, and it sticks in there for a long time. You know,
So maybe, and I think it's not the conservation's on the issues of Stratford Street, the street itself. So maybe we'll come back to that and who exactly speaks to that. Could we ask?
Yeah.
So I think the catch basin that he's talking about that was installed and was supposed to take care of the issue a few years back, I believe it was that one that we keep going back to. I don't think it has an outlet pipe, and that would make sense that it was installed only a few years ago with minimal disturbance. That would mean it probably wasn't connected to anything. It doesn't surprise me. When our surveyors were out there, it was a very dry day, and there was approximately 6 inches of water puddled up right there, and that does slope up a little bit, but basically it has to get to a point where it crosses over a little hump right there and then flows out to East Street. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of flooding in there. Our proposed design is intended to take care of that.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, so there's the buffer area there. I think there's been some changes to that against the houses that are on the south side there. And is there anything that could, what impact would that have on Stratford Place?
So along this east property line here, this fence that you were just referencing that gets broken every year, we did propose a curb, a vertical granite curb all along the back. So this area will actually be raised, and it all flows in the direction out to East Street. It's not intended that any of that would flow backwards out onto Stratford Place. This fence is being replaced with an 8-foot-high screening fence that is vinyl plastic. The one that we propose is styled to have a wood finish. if that's preferred to match what's existing out there. So this will actually be raised a little bit. It'll be planted, additional roots, drainage. I think that this will take care of the issues. What's existing here right now as well, it does bump out a little bit right here, vegetated, but it tapers off back to about 2 feet back here. What we've talked about, or what we show is proposed here, is from 9 feet over here to about, I think it's 11 or 12 feet over here. And we pulled it out as far as we could while still fitting the required parking in the lot.
Thank you. But the one other thing that, and this I'm going to a little different area here than we would necessarily go. There's an odd sort of property line along there. All of that granite vertical curve that you were just describing. Yeah, if you go south along that edge, it just sort of rounds out and ends there. And it's not clear if there's any edging from there all the way over to East Street, and if you have affirmative drainage in there, and it almost looks like you would be well served to continue that granite curve along there, to have a hard edge, and potentially put a catch basin in there before it then goes into East Street, so that you can drop it into the pipe that then gets into that catch basin system heading what's that, east on East Street.
So this, what you see down here is actually, there's a residence right here. I'm not sure of the address. We could maybe pull up another plan that the existing one and the proposed. But this is an entrance, and this is the only access into this person's house right there. And what we're doing is giving that person easement so that we're not changing their driveway entrance.
Does it make sense nonetheless to put in a catch basin on the project side and make sure that you've captured that runoff rather than right now? Are we sure it's not just going to follow there?
You can take another.
Double catch basin right there, and double catch basin right there.
Oh, okay, I can't see that. That's where that loading area is. At the very end of that, okay, it's hard to see.
So this is 3 Stratford Place over there, and this is Stratford Place down here. They come in, and that is their only access as well. So we'd be providing them easement to their driveway.
I guess the one thing I'd ask is for each one of those, it might be worth having something on the plan that just says driveway access to be maintained or something like that, so everybody's clear on that. And I would expect that Stratford should be allowed to continue to connect through, but there's no intention of blocking that off. Or is, okay, that would be, so the same would be true for that, to maintain vehicle access to each of these locations.
Right, so that was actually one of the previous comments from a planning board hearing. We did have parking over there, but they had us remove that where this is an access for this person.
Gotcha.
And this is a catch basin, a double catch basin, as we discussed collecting all of this. So that was intended to be right before that driveway entrance, taking care of their property.
All right, thank you for the comment. Anyone else? Yes. Do you want to, just identify yourself and address.
Dr. Patero, 16 Dean Street. You're right, John. You did cover most of the concerns that I had. I do have a couple of questions. And I have to tell you, I'm a little bit befuddled at the moment. RJ, you're right. DEP has some very specific guidelines on snow storage and removal. To filter, this is right out of it. To filter pollutants out of the meltwater, whenever possible, a 50-foot vegetative buffer strip should be maintained during the growth season. Historically, in the past, the Concom has designated areas for snow storage, and we put them as far away as possible from the water bodies. We haven't put them proximal to the water bodies. DEP is very clear about this activity. I strongly recommend a review of that before you guys decide where the snow is going to go. Can we go back to the East Street, School Street side? I have a couple of questions for for Phil, and then a comment for the planning board. Phil, I don't like the idea of cutting the pipe here, and I'll tell you why. This has been designed for a 25-year storm, and we seem to be getting more 50 and 100-year storms than we have in a long time. And my concern is, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a 12-inch outflow pipe here?
Yeah.
Okay, into a 10-inch clay pipe. Wouldn't it make sense? My concern is 21 School Street is going to take it on the chin. And while I'm here, it was hard to tell on the revised plans. Is there a wetlands incursion? Are wetlands being filled, or is this buffer zone and vegetative buffer strip activity? I could not tell on the revised plans.
So the previous plan that was presented last week, 2 weeks, last week, 2 weeks, it did show wetland impacts and recreation. So, however, since then we pulled that whole edge 20 feet in on the whole length.
So this is all buffer zone activity, not wetlands? Okay, good. My concern, Phil, is with that 12-inch pipe there and a 100-year storm and a clay pipe that may crumble, why not just replace it now? I don't get it. The other comment I had was, I didn't see the soil article, so I'm glad you pointed that out. It is for the planning board over here. This looks a little bit different than what I saw earlier. I understood this to be a block wall. Is that correct? The initial grade here is at 127 feet. The finished grade is at 113 feet. Is this really going to be a 14-foot block wall here that tapers down to 10 feet? Because if it is, shoot, I don't like going behind Lowe's down in Dedham. I certainly don't want to see it here, and I don't think it's going to give it a village feel. Personally, I'd rather sacrifice some parking spaces and slope it, give it a 2-to-1 slope and make it look nice, rather than a block wall that's 14 feet high. Did I read that plan wrong?
So what's shown on here is existing and proposed contours tying into the existing. We met up with grades at the entrances of the driveways, kept this at a consistent 109. This is anywhere from a 2 to 4% slope coming to the back of the lot, keeping all of the handicap accessible areas at 2%. You can see that it goes back at about 4% here to this corner area. We took advantage of this landscaped area over here and graded up to the wall. And then you have a wall. I don't remember how many feet it is. It certainly isn't 14. But then
it is 127 there, and it's 113, 114 for your first control line.
I think, you know, it does say actually at the corner of that retaining wall, you scroll over there, it says the height. Oh, it's not on that drawing. It's on the drawing I'm looking at, this C6.
What is it?
Shows it as 5.
So 8 feet at one and 5 feet at the other.
Yeah, 8 feet at one end, 5 feet at the other, taking down to 1 feet, or 1 foot.
5 to 7 foot height on this wall at the rear. And we did take advantage of this 20-foot buffer area that we did maintain between any structure. So this is 20 feet from the property line to that wall, and then another 8 feet from the face of wall to the back of curb.
So what's the slope at the top of the wall? Looks like 2 to 1.
So I know that this is 3 to 1. That might be 2. That looks like 2 to 1. And then we leveled it off what you would need for the 8 feet of planting along the rear of the line. So this is proposed as a concrete block wall reinforced with geogrid. The geogrid goes back about 1.3 times the height of the wall, which can conceivably be maintained and still plant those trees along the back for screening.
Any other comments?
Yes, I have a comment.
Sure.
Ray Jackson.
I'm sorry, could you come up to the microphone, give your name and address, sorry.
Yeah.
But just to make sure we have it on the record.
Ray Jackson, 263 Washington Street. We're directly behind that wall. Concern for me is my gunite pool. I just want to make sure that any construction done in that area won't damage the pool or this wall we're talking about. I guess we're going to have a buffer from our fence line to the wall. I don't know what the footage will be, but what am I going to be looking at from, I guess, the ground up and
so when you're looking at it from your side, there'll be a fence from the outside, and then on the inside, there'll be, if you notice all the darker greens, that's all landscape buffer, so you won't be seeing the wall from your side of that.
we're in the process of putting up a fence too, so.
Don't waste your money, Mark.
Actually, that would be great, maybe we should talk, but yeah, I was just concerned about maybe some of the trees being left, and I am concerned about the pool itself. Just, I don't know what kind of heavy equipment will be in there. And, what's that?
How close are you to the line?
Well, if you're, from my fence line, you're talking 20, I'm probably 15 feet back from the fence, maybe the beginning of the pool. So maybe 20 feet away, maybe 30.
I can stop by and talk
Yeah,
about it.
To scale cross section sometimes also just shows it to be kind of a lot sort of further away relative to the height.
Yeah.
Then you might be concerned. They're going to be working.
I'm a visual person, so
Yeah.
if we can meet
cross
that
sections can help a lot to clarify those.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments from the audience? From the commission or the planning board?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was at that meeting with the consultants where we worked out all these things. And I thank Phil for coming out with this new plan, which rearranged the parking lot and enabled the parking and the roads to move back away from the wetlands. Just one thing we did discuss is the crosswalk through there, rather than making that sharp right angle, would be put it on straight across, which is more typical where the people would walk. And you still have the same square thing. Was it feasible to put that crosswalk at an angle?
So what Steve's referring to is, this is the sidewalks on Washington Street. You have walkways that come along the back here, and you have a crosswalk to an island right here, crosswalk, island, and up to School Street. What they were talking about at the meeting is coming from this island right here and going diagonal across the parking lot. And we kept it the way that it's shown now for two reasons. One, because this is the municipal parking area back here, and we thought it provided some separation between the CVS lot and the municipal lot. And the second reason being it kind of crossed over these last two parking spaces right there. We thought it maybe wasn't as safe. It's a little bit longer of a crossing, but we can understand the point of this island back here. We had to keep it at 3 inches to get like a 3-inch curb reveal to get.
So where was this 3 inches you're talking about?
All of the other islands, you would see a 6-inch curb reveal. On this one, we had to keep it lower at 3 inches to still maintain the separation and get the slopes that you would need to put a crosswalk on this side and a crosswalk over here. Removing that parking stall that Phil was talking about and bringing this line closer this way, it's exactly 24 feet from here to here, which is the required 2-way width for a parking lot. But it increases it over here to about 27 feet, 26 or 27 feet for the aisles, and keeping this in a straight line. So we did take the liberty of expanding that island a little bit after we got that comment back, but that was after a discussion, looking at the plans with the client, with the design engineer for CVS as well.
I mean, is there some way we could still, because the whole idea was then we could get that, rather than that traffic, that island being completely concrete, if we got the crosswalk away from it, we could get a planted island with a tree there. So there must be some way we could get this, get a good angle in there so that this will work and not have because no one's going to really walk the way you have it onto that traffic island, and that, particularly it's in the middle of a parking lot where there's not much traffic, so it's not like someone's going to be crossing there and huddling in that traffic island waiting for the cars to go by. It's just going to be walking straight across the parking lot. And why not put the crosswalk where the people are actually going to be?
So my client Georgia was telling me just to do the diagonal crosswalk. We won't be able to get a tree there because it is directly over the infiltrators, but we can certainly make that a planted island.
You know, whatever. The biggest thing you can plant that to get away with on top of it. So since we're getting down to the end here, I just had a few more things I wanted to be sure of. On the catch basins, all of the old catch basins are being removed and replaced by a whole new system. Is that correct?
That is correct. All of the catch basins are being replaced with new catch basins with 4-foot sumps.
And the curbing, it's going to be vertical granite curbing throughout? Throughout. Is there any place where there won't be, other than that little curve at the inside where you have that little turn? Is that still going to be, it's going to be a sloped curve up with the vertical curve in the back? It wasn't clear from the diagram. You had 2 diagrams in the plan, but I couldn't tell which you were actually going to use.
So those diagrams were shown from 2 different directions. We included both of them, depending on which side you were coming off of. But yes, this is sloped granite curbing right there. It's filled with stamped resin, which is basically asphalt paving, and then a vertical granite curb behind it. And the reason we had to do it in that location is for the Westwood tire truck turning radii to come in there.
So there will be vertical granite curbing everywhere with this curbing?
Everywhere else, granite.
There's no curbing along here.
Except where there are handicap spots, where it will be flat.
Right, so the handicap, all along the CVS building, and that's one of the standard CVS designs now, there's no reveal on this sidewalk back here. So there's bollards with signs at all of the handicap spots, and there's parking bumpers on each of the other parking spaces. but everywhere else there is vertical granite curb. At the handicap ramps, there's curb with flush granite curb going across the landing.
And that's clearly shown on the plans?
I believe that it is.
Or maybe we should make it a condition.
I do believe the
So
visual scale shows.
we can
shows
generally,
granite going
in
across the
conditions
front.
like this, we put it as conditions so it's perfectly clear. And so in the wall that we put back there, as we just went over, it, is the way we discussed it at the meeting. Construction exits. You indicate certain ones, so that, does that mean, for instance, there will be no construction trucks using the School Street exit at all, because you're only putting the riprap down on the Washington Street side, and the same thing with the East Street side. The East Street is the construction entrance, and the Washington Street will not be a construction entrance at all.
Right, and the reason that we did that, we designated one exit for each site, and we specifically didn't put it on the School Street side where it was a concern of the residents to having trucks coming out on School Street. And on the East Street side, we chose to have it along East Street rather than out onto Washington Street, because the multi-use facility this side of the site is undergoing complete redevelopment, building demolished, moved, completely new construction. And over here, this is being renovated, so we chose to have this be the exit.
All right, so again, Abby, we should put this as a condition so it's really clear that in practice that's the way it's supposed to operate. Those are the only construction entrances and exits. And on the truck turns, I just wanted to go over those. The truck, the little big truck, does it have to go to the other side of the street when it enters and exits the School Street side?
So it's what we did talk about this, and we did see that you do have to migrate to the other side of the street to make that turn. And what we had talked about is, for this size truck, there's one delivery a week. CVS has agreed to do it off-peak hours. That's typical for them. And any other truck turning into the site from that entrance is going to be a smaller truck. So essentially, you'd have one truck of that size a week.
I think you went by it. There was one right there. Was that the fire truck or was that the delivery truck? Okay. Yeah. So as it approaches the School Street entrance, it has to slightly go off the other side of the street.
Correct.
And then if it comes out and it makes a right turn, it really has to swing out on the opposite side of the street there.
Yeah, so you can see from here, it'd be ideal to take a left turn out onto Washington Street.
My guess is they'll pull into this, and pull up. They'll do the same thing over here, they'll pull across the road.
All right, that's all I have.
So I think if, to summarize, unless there are any other comments from the planning board.
I just have a couple questions. Are we focusing only on I'm breaking my own rule. Is this open for all questions or just for the? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I just have a few. So just since the wetlands are so close to the street, for the winter salting, what is the salting plan for the parking lot? Is it just going to be plowed?
Can I just suggest that get addressed with the snow storage? I think to me, it's caught up in that same conversation, and the plans that are put together. And actually, it probably relates also to the long-term stormwater management, controls, inspections, etc. That's an issue, especially sanding.
Yeah.
Salting is also an issue that should be addressed.
So you guys will take care of that because they're likely not coming back to.
Yeah, I think that would be included in that that sort of condition of the applicant's responsibility.
And then just as to close the loop on the parking, so the parking on either side of Washington, that'll be fine for public parking.
Either side.
Both sides.
Both sides, yeah.
Right. And the last one, just from a structural standpoint, for where the columns come down, will there be a delineation between the sidewalk, the look of the sidewalk, and the structure underneath the columns, like a differentiation from a design feature? Because there won't be an elevation.
We were actually thinking of
We were thinking that it would be one material because the patio, if it's a potential cafe, that would be a covered area for the patio. There were French doors that opened up, so it would be the same paving. It would all be one. After the last meeting, we looked at the columns. We did redesign the columns to match the existing. I think that's part of the packet. And Trevor suggested putting a wall or a change in grade, and we did look at that, but it actually felt like it was not a good.
Yeah, because when I look at the rendition, I do like the look of that, where it's so a little different. So,
yeah, we're thinking that the paving that would all be the same. Now, whether we change colors, we could have a gray right at the underneath, and then change the color to more of a tan.
the same material, maybe a different color.
Yeah, we could do that.
And that's those are the only questions.
So we also asked for the underground parking, the entrance to be shown in more detail and show have pedestrian warning signs that flash when cars go out. So you going to provide that?
So I think, so Abby, you probably captured the things that Steve has raised, and just to kind of outline the process from the planning board perspective, I would like to see anything, any further materials. We'd like to get those by the end of this week, and if there's going to be any changes that are as a result of what you guys come up with here that would like change parking spaces and all. Ideally, we'd like to have that information like by Friday of this week, which is pretty soon, because I'd like to have the weekend to be able to digest all the materials that we're looking at. In our process, we would, at this point, I would ask for a motion to continue this our hearing. But the idea will be that when we resume this on April 10th, we have like final presentations and public comment. Also, I should mention that we could submit comments to the planning board by email and anything people think of things after this meeting. And all of that we will consider as we get ready for our deliberations, which would probably begin on the 10th of April. The thing about the planning board process, Abby will be putting together a list of findings and conditions, because I think it's important to understand that we work through this special permit to come up with findings of fact. It won't be just like, oh, I think this is great or bad or whatever, but we go through and we consider their waivers for specific things like the height, the setbacks. We need to make findings about whether the size of the residential is okay, the affordable housing component we talked about before, the fiscal impact, and there are a number of things that we as a board will need to make a finding of fact. And once you make those findings of fact, then it's sort of you make all the findings of fact, and then the conclusions essentially follow from the facts. So it's sort of a legal proceeding in a way there. And that's what we'll be working through as our deliberation. So I would like to see us have not be here until 3 a.m. or anything on the 10th, but I think we've had a lot of information over the past 6 months, and I look forward to that discussion. So I think unless there's any other comments from board members now, I would entertain a motion to continue this planning board hearing to April 10th.
Charles Spray, Westwood Conservation. I think the crosswalk should stay exactly where it is. If you put it at an angle, you're gonna put it too close to the parking spots, and it could open up to an accident. Pedestrians cross, if you put the crosswalk at an angle, people backing up, it's gonna be out of their line of vision, especially if somebody's walking with a child. I think it's a safety concern. We should keep that crosswalk the same distance at the exact location right where it is now. It would be a safety issue if you moved it diagonally.
Maybe we could compromise and put a curve on it, so keep it going to the middle and then curve over to there, so it's not right behind those cars.
There's room for
being creative here.
It should be at least the same length as a car length, so that when you set it back up as that vision at an angle that they can see a child. It's a safety concern, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think a child walking behind a car, like that's it's a nightmare.
It's already been thought out. I would feel more comfortable with that crosswalk just stay exactly where it is. Thank you.
So I need a motion. Which way we go? Who wants one? So, my thought of the crosswalk is that, as you pointed out, that sounds reasonable. It sounds, we don't want to create a false sense of security, but I mean, people are not going to use the crosswalk. They're going to go the way they want to go, and so it won't magically cause them to be in that path. But
maybe we could have the crosswalk go up to the island, but not on the island, and then just have a turn at that point, so that we can preserve the island as vegetated, and that might work.
But there's going to be no trees. It's going to be low. There's going to be no tree on that. It'll just be low line vegetation.
If we leave it like this, I think we could put some green space on that end of it. Is that right, Sue?
Yeah, maybe you can angle it just to the other corner, so half of it is vegetated, and then half is just where the pedestrians can go.
This way?
Right, and not have the ramps, keep it like the traffic islands on regular crosswalks, where you see they're kept at the street level with just curbing protection on each side. Well, you know, the standard now for when crosswalks cross small traffic islands, they cut right through the island. So, all right, so we'll work on something close to that. So it goes to the island, but not take up the whole island. I move that we continue this hearing to April 10th, 7 o'clock at the Downey Elementary School.
Second. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No.
Thank you.
So thanks, folks. And now, on the Conservation Commission, I think we have a couple of things to discuss as a group. We do commonly, where we think we've sort of flushed out all the issues and feel that they can be resolved, through a subsequent submittal that goes to the agent. Back to me if there's any questions about sort of what we were exactly looking for, and if we need to reach out to others to clarify. But we very commonly do that. So I would suggest, and I guess I would similarly ask, that we consider calling the hearing under our jurisdiction closed, conditional on various items we've asked for. I've got a markup here of the various things I've mentioned that pretty much gets contained on one plan. And that, with that, we could go to drafting an order of conditions and have the project proceed based on that, including getting, obviously, the updated plan.
Mr. Chairman, I move to close the public hearing. I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion, questions, comments? If not, all those in favor? Aye. So I think that gets us done for both, for the Conservation Commission. For now, we've got some work to get done, get material from the applicant, make sure that Phil's on board with final review of that and beta overall. And with that, I think we are done for tonight on the Islington Village. Both the Conservation Commission and Planning Board are going to stick around to discuss some other matters. People are welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go home if you so choose. We're going to take let's take at least 10-minute break. I think I need just to get up and get my circulation going.
All right, we're going to call the meeting back to order now and take up with the second item on the planning board agenda. The second item on the planning board agenda is the continued public hearing on zoning amendments for annual town meeting. You recall there are two zoning articles related to the Islington Center redevelopment project, a zoning map amendment and an amendment to allow retail sales 10,000, changing it to 15,000 square feet in FNEOD 6. That is an article that we proposed so that this project could go forward because the CDS originally being designed as larger than the permitted 10,000 square feet. So I would entertain discussion. Steve, would you like to?
Well, I'll make a motion that we withdraw that article for consideration.
I second that.
So I have a motion and a second to withdraw that article from consideration.
Yeah, it's clearly not needed, and its sole purpose was to allow that CVS to go forward. Since the CVS now is less than 10,000 square feet, and it's not needed.
So we're clear, we're just amending, we're no longer going to be amending section 9.5 to retail sales of 10 to 15,000 square feet. We are going to leave the expansion of the LDD zone.
Yeah, the two articles, I don't know what they're, Article 1 and Article 2 is probably what we call them. And so we're just saying that Article 2 is the one we're going to withdraw.
Is that clear?
I second that motion.
Is there any public comment? Then I would call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
So I move that we continue this hearing until April 10th at 7 o'clock at the county school cafeteria.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, and I believe we are now ready for the next item on the agenda.
Sure. Yeah, so I can, I don't know, formally reopen the Conservation Commission meeting or hearing on a separate item. This is related to Redwood's Farm. And we thought that with consultation of staff, it would make sense to have, frankly, this opportunity where the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission were together on a project that similarly to the last project we were talking about, crosses over in between the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. I think I can give maybe just a quick overview, and then we could go to the applicant for a description. But it's a project that was, I think, approved some 4 or 5 years ago before I think everybody on the Conservation Commission was on the commission, other than one member. We did, while I was on the commission, issue one partial certificate of compliance 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was, allowing some residents to move in. Frankly, I think we've sort of been watching in interest to see when things might get finished, watching carefully enough our own business and allow the certificate of compliance, or I'm sorry, the order of conditions for our, that we had on the project to expire, substantially expire. Realized that put us in an awkward position, along with the owners of property and the homeowners out there. Had begun a discussion, had some discussion with the builder, his engineer, town council, to try and figure out, okay, what do we do from here? And we've had a lot of discussion, and looking forward to hearing the applicants, the developers, engineers' suggestion. We've had a draft agreement that's passed around and been reviewed by town council. And we're here to sort of figure out what we can do to try and expedite the completion of this project. It's everyone's goal. It's frankly been an eyesore for a long time. It seems very strange that it's not already done. And we're looking to see if we can't get that corrected in the most expeditious manner possible. So with that, if I could turn it over to John Glossop, you're going to present.
I am, Mr. Chairman. So what I have is, and what we've seen are is the agreement, right? One of them has the date that for completion that we've proposed, which is September 28th.
Do you have handouts, John? Because I'm not sure that we have the latest.
Yeah, I don't know if I have enough for everyone because.
Sure.
And then the other thing I did based on past conversations was sort of create a punch list, but as we said, and it says it at the end of the punch list, really, to get a certificate of compliance, so to speak, he needs to finish the plan in accordance with, finish the site in accordance with the set of plans in the order of conditions. So, as I said, one of those agreements has the completion date simply blank, and the other one has the date that I guess at one point we probably at least somewhat kind of agreed to, which was the end of September. The other two things that we talked about, and so I guess we should talk about them again when we meet on Saturday, is the elimination of the baby pool, which is this, you can see it. For the members of the planning board, this is the baby pool. And the baby pool was not part of the original design. It was, I'm not blaming anybody, I blame myself, and I've already said this. Because the drainage calculations showed a little bit of water leaking out of these two catch basins in a 100-year storm, the peer reviewer, who was Lisa Eggleston, it wasn't David, and it wasn't Beals and Thomas, it was Lisa Eggleston, asked us to sort of create this extra volume above the underground leaching basin, which is what this is right here, this more square thing. So we did that sort of in a rush to kind of get the thing approved at the end. The problem with it is that it has a catch basin grid on the top of it, and you really don't want a catch basin grid right on the top of an underground infiltration system because it lets dirt and leaves and grass and things directly into the infiltration basin that you don't want to get in there. That's going to shorten its life and require the owners to replace it in an earlier time frame than otherwise you would do. The rest of the catch basins here and here and here, and the ones in the street that connect to it, have deep sumps in them and hoods or snouts that keep the floatables in the catch basins and out of the infiltration basin. So the elimination of the baby pool does nothing, believe me, to change the drainage calculations. And when I did these drainage calculations, and it's a long story why, I'm just going to tell you that we look at two things: the rate of runoff and the volume of runoff. And in all of the storms, 2, 10, 20, 25, and 100, the rates of runoff are at least half from the existing condition in the proposed condition. So we knocked them down by 50%. And that was because of where the stormwater eventually discharges, which is down at Stanford Street, that there's some pipes that weren't in the best shape. So that was our remedy, that was our mitigation for that. But even with the elimination of the baby pool, the rates of runoff and the volumes are still significantly reduced. The rates are reduced by at least half and more, and I don't have the volumes in my head right now. Reduced significantly. The other thing is that right now we have all along here, and the residents and the developer have agreed to extend that wall all the way to this slope back in here. That would require a filing with the Conservation Commission. You can't just simply ignore that because that is within 100 feet of wetlands, but we would plan to do that sort of as soon as we kind of come to some agreement. And then the other thing that's not shown on here, which we talked about, was the elimination of the landscape diamonds here and have it paved. And I think that that was something that the fire department was asking about. That's my understanding. Those are the three changes to the plans. As far as, I do have a punch list, but most of this drainage system now is in, it's connected, right? So it's all connected up to the town's drainage system here. This has all been connected. This above ground basin was built very early, one of the first things to be built as part of the construction. So even though that may not be 100% exactly to the grades that this plan shows, it's fairly close, and it's functioning very well, at least in my sort of experience when I've come up here. I've never really seen any standing water in this basin. So the way this works now is the drainage from here will go into this basin, and then it connects into the underground basin and out. Drainage from here and here and lower catch basins go directly into the underground basin and out. This work itself could probably be finished up in a couple of weeks, and then we need permitting for this from the planning board and the conservation. We need permitting from this from the planning board and the conservation, and I guess we need permitting from this from the planning board. Those things can take a few weeks to get, and then we're off and running. I just, I went through, and you can read my punch list. There's some other things that have to be done. So each one of these buildings, and again, this wasn't part of our design, and this doesn't have any bearing on the drainage calculations, but in the end, Lisa Eggleston said it would be nice to have each downspout connected to an underground leaching chamber. So I don't believe all of those have been done at this time. There's some grading around these area drains. Apparently there's some of these water is missing in the area drains. There's 3 of them. There's some fine grading there. There's the installation of the inspection ports on the infiltration basin, bringing the drainage, sewage, and water structures to finished grade, stabilizing all disturbed areas. Plantings is shown on the plan. There's a planting plan that specifies exactly what's to be planted in there. The infiltration trench here hasn't been installed, but that really isn't a huge amount of work. There's a level spreader where this these two catch basins where they discharge into the basin here that has to be installed. With some grading, as I said, this isn't 100% to the grades, but it's fairly close. The guardrail, which runs all the way along this side here, and then there's a little bit on this side here. So this, I don't know how many years, but this has been paved with binder course for a number of years, probably 5 years. And along the edges, it's been cracking. So usually what we would do there is saw probably a foot inside those cracks, remove that pavement, make sure that the sub-base is in good shape, roll it, and then put binder, patch binder down, and then when that's done, there'd be bituminous berm, which goes along the edges of the roadway, and then the final course of asphalt. And then so the installation of the berm, final course of asphalt, cleaning all catch basins, installation of the 8-inch gravel path to the outlet structure, that's what this is here, and that just gives someone the opportunity for maintenance to get, there's an outlet structure here, to get to that outlet structure, and that's simply just a gravel path. I heard that in some places, either this retaining wall or this retaining wall doesn't properly have the proper cap on it, so cap on the retaining wall. I heard that it's, at least this retaining wall, some people think that it's needs some repair to it, and then removal of the erosion control, and then clean up. So there might be some other things some other people might come up with, but those were the items that I came up with. I was asked to sort of generate the punch list. So I guess, and as you know, we all talked about, there's an expired order of conditions, there's a little bit of question as to whether you know, a new order of conditions is really required, whether the work would go on without an order of conditions, which I believe it can because it's not within 100 feet of wetlands, other than the retaining wall. We proposed the agreement, and we thought that that's what the commission wanted us to do. I think that it gives you some teeth in the developer, where it has an order of conditions simply given another 3 years, and we think that that's the best way to, at least I do, to get this project finished. And I guess that's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman, with this project. So I guess I can answer any questions, or Ed can answer any questions that you may have.
So we, maybe what we'll do is just go through a couple of items, and then sort of go down the line of commissioners' concerns. But maybe first is to talk about those issues that go also to the planning board. I believe the two issues are, I'm not sure if the baby pool is something you need to weigh in on at all, or have any concerns about. There is the retaining wall extension, which I agree seems a smart thing to do, the right thing to do, beyond actually what I've been just now looking at and seeing. It doesn't cover all of the exposed banks that I'm aware of. And then this little little island at the end of the roundabout. Anything else that you're aware of, John, or the other planning board members here aware, or staff are aware that are an issue?
As far as I know, those would be the three issues, the three changes to the plan. We're not saying that we wouldn't complete it without those changes, but I think it's in everyone's best interest, and especially the people who own these units, probably to make all three of those changes.
So maybe before we jump into the planning board, I don't know if this is a jurisdictional issue with the planning board at all, but I'm understanding it is. The only thing I would say about this retaining wall is you're showing it coming up to an end, and I think it needs to turn left about 15, 20 feet, something like that, because there is an overhanging bank some distance back from that corner, right? I mean, I just was out there late this afternoon and saw it again. Is there a reason not to?
My defense, Mr. Chairman, I didn't draw this. I don't know where it came from.
So I think that would be the one change.
We can talk, excuse me though, we can talk about that on Saturday, and we can probably put a stake exactly where everyone thinks or stakes. I'll bring some beam poles, we'll put them right in exactly where we think the wall should go. And there won't be any question about it when it finally gets up.
So, any concerns of the planning boards for those elements?
So procedurally, could you just, we would have to have a public hearing for my modification or something.
Right, I think so. If there's any changes to the approved plans that the planning board approved, then that needs to go back to the planning board for a formal modification, and we'd like to have a public hearing for that. So, right, I apologize. I think that markup on the plan was just me trying to see what changes had come to fruition and discussed over the last couple of weeks. But I was aware of the discussion on extending the retaining wall, eliminating the baby pool, and eliminating the landscape area and the turnaround. Those were shown on the planning board's plan, so that needs to go back to the planning board for a formal review.
So we would not be able to make, we wouldn't be able to take action tonight, but we could discuss
Right,
it.
but you can, yeah,
This is a
discuss it.
continuation of the meeting that we had back in November, right?
Right, it's really a discussion item, and in November you did talk to Mr. Musto about the status of the work and drainage being completed back in the fall was discussed.
I think our main concern is that we just wanted to get it done. But does anyone on the board have questions or opinions on these substantive changes here?
Well, I'm concerned about removing the landscaping in the cul-de-sac. We try to make cul-de-sacs as nice as they can be, and not a mass of asphalt. So, is the size wrong? That the island may be too big for the fire truck? We can just make it smaller, or we can make it the kind where it would be planted, but in an emergency they could drive over it because there would just be small bushes and whatnot on it. So do we have information on what the size of this relative to the other ones we've approved?
I do not, and that's,
Well,
it's not sort
yeah,
of
I'm kind of asking Abby and Nora what we've, how this relates to other cul-de-sacs.
I don't remember, but this was a special permit, so it's not a subdivision, so it wasn't to your subdivision standards.
It was approved by the fire department at the time that it was reviewed. It was looked at to make sure you could make the tightest turn that you needed to make, and the center area was intentionally left as pervious area. You did a similar, you had a similar approval on Far Ridge Road where you extended a cul-de-sac there, and you required the central area of the cul-de-sac to be a pervious area. You did the same on Morgan Farm. So all of the recent approvals that have had cul-de-sacs, you've required them to have that open pervious area. It doesn't have to be fully landscaped if the new fire chief feels differently than the old fire chief did on what the configuration of it should be. You can take that up at a hearing and consider an alternate design. But I think what you do not want is continuous pavement across the bulb of that cul-de-sac.
So just how does the removing the landscaping make it more likely that things are going to get done? Is it just like just taking?
No. What's going to make it more likely that things are going to get done is an agreement that Mr. Musto has presented to the Conservation Commission that puts a deadline on the date of when he's going to be done and when an as-built plan is going to be accepted by the Conservation Commission. After that point, he's going to start paying fines to the town. So that's what's going to drive the date that this gets done. As far as the baby pool, the only reason we're bringing that up is, to tell you the truth, and I'll take the biggest hit on this you want to give me, I'm telling you, it's a mistake. And it doesn't do anything. If it has no function at all, believe me. I do drainage calculations, I do this stuff all the time. It was my fault. I let somebody push me into a remedy that I really didn't think through. I was in a hurry to get the thing approved for my client, and I made a mistake. And I should have fought back and said, look, A, it's not needed, or B, if it is needed, let's find a different way to do it, because this is not the best way to do it.
So we had a considerable discussion about this at our last Conservation Commission meeting and agreed entirely that the functionality, I'm also a practicing stormwater engineer for decades, and I can't see the benefit of it. In fact, I see every disadvantage to having something there that doesn't have any functional value and is probably in the way of a relatively simple and attractive landscaping at the entrance to this development.
So how deep is this, and what kind of, it would just be grass?
Varies in depth because the road's going uphill. The pool itself is what, 2 feet deep?
It's 2.5 feet deep, so on the low side, right, on this side, there's a 2.5 foot wall. By the time you get to this side, it's about 5 feet. So it's so you have this wall, and then what's called for is for it to be mulched with small plantings. You don't want to put a tree over the top of this thing. So that's what the cover over the top of it would be, and that's what it would look like.
So the wall, when you say the wall is higher at the high end, and
yep,
it seems to be backwards to me, but in general, I don't understand how
about
it's
2.5 feet here. This wall is about 2.5 feet here high. This road's going uphill, right? So when it gets, so the bottom of the baby pool is level. It's not on an angle, right? It's flat, but the road's going up. So when you get up here, the walls maybe.
Because it's going into the hill, it's not.
Yeah, it's level. It's going
cutting into the hill.
Because I was always wondering how a detention basin could be on a hill, because certainly the water won't agree with that.
Yeah, no, so it's all level, and it, you know, to tell you the truth, you're never going to get any water coming out of that infiltration basin up into that baby pool, but that's another matter. I think the biggest problem with the baby pool is that it's a problem with maintenance, and it's a problem with the longevity of the infiltration basin itself. We want that infiltration basin to last, 50, 60, 70 years or more. We don't want it to be filling up right away with, debris that you see in nature. Grass clippings, mulch, sand, dirt, that sort of stuff. So I think to me, that's the biggest issue with the baby pool. And the other issue with it is, and you're just going to have to trust me on this, or I'll give you the information, is it has no benefit at all.
Is there any impact? I remember last time a long discussion about the pipe running under the Stanford Drive and stuff.
So the pipe here is installed and tied into the infiltration basin. This is all tied into the above ground basin. So the system itself is completed, except that it needs to now be shaped up 100%. The cover over the infiltration basin needs to be, finalized, and there isn't a lot of work, but there is some work to do there. And then it all needs to be stabilized with loam and seed, or whatever it may cost.
So could you refresh our memory, and maybe Nora can do this, because you appeared before the planning board back, and as I recall, you promised to do all these things. And this was supposed to have been done, what, last November? And I guess it's April now. So why are these things still not done?
That I really can't tell you. I think the fact is that it's not done. And the facts are that we have a procedure laid out with a deadline to get them done. And we've presented a deadline of September 28th. If you think,
what year is that?
2018. If you think it can be done faster, we don't think so, because you're going to have some stabilization to be done at the end, which means grass needs to be growing before the Conservation Commission is happy. And we're almost at, getting very close to the end of the growing season, believe it or not, for this year. If you don't really get grass kind of in the ground by about April 15th or so, you have a hard time. Unless you're going to water it every day, you have a hard time getting it to grow. So we'd like to at least get, the end of August and September to get things stabilized. In the meantime, all of these things will be worked on. There's a punch list, there's a list, there's a plan, there's dates, and there's an agreement that Mr. Musto is ready to sign, and if the Conservation Commission wants to sign it, we're not telling you to sign it tonight. We're going to meet on Saturday and talk about this, and then I think, do we meet again next week, is it? Then we meet again next week, so we can hopefully get it done, all done by then. Get an agreement done, and then get the...
No, could you refresh us? The town was holding up occupancy permits on some of the buildings. What happened with that?
There's one unit in the final building, the building closest to High Street. There are 2 units, 11 and 13. Mr. Musto sold all the units except for unit 11. The town has suspended any inspections or the issuance of any occupancy permits. So that unit remains unsold and incomplete.
So the building is only partially completed, but it looks like it's still under construction?
The exterior appears to be complete. The interior may or may not be complete, but it has not been inspected, and it has not been issued a C of O. There's other work at other units that property owners would like to have done, and that work cannot be done either until the site work is complete. So the site work, the landscaping, and the drainage have not been completed, and for that reason, we have withheld permits or inspections on any other aspects of the project. I do want to just point out one thing. You did have an agreement, the Conservation Commission members, had a draft agreement that had been reviewed by council at your last meeting. That is not the same as the agreement that was presented to you tonight, and you're advised not to sign the agreement that was presented tonight.
So my other concern is you're claiming that September you need to get the grass to grow, but that means the work should be done shortly, and the rest of the time will be the grass is just growing. So can we have a date by which the work is going to be done and everything except allowing the grass to grow, so we can see that this actually happens and not wait until September to find out nothing was done?
Yes, so we've had some discussion of that, and I think we have previously had a version we thought was mostly there. This version is a little different, and so I'm not sure, but it was intended to address just that issue, that there would be something like a substantial completion, which is all the physical construction is essentially done by some certain date, and that you have to take some time for the vegetation, the landscaping to grow in and stabilize. And although ideally you really want to give that a substantial amount of time, like on the order of a year, full growing season plus, I'm not sure that's reasonable in this case, and so that's why we were thinking of holding the final until September or thereabouts. I think that's some discussion we want to have some more. I know a lot of us have been out to the site. We're having a site walk as a commission. So we're going to continue our hearing to a site walk 9 a.m. this coming Saturday. So we can sort of walk around the site. I was out there tonight. We observed some of the local
sort of drainage issues on a lot of the yard areas between the buildings.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's certainly reasonable to us that you could break the completion dates down into 2 dates, just as you said. So I didn't think of that. I'm the one who drafted that. I'm the one who kind of drafted the first agreement to kind of get the ball rolling. So that's where we stand. Whether you sign that one or any other one that's reasonable to us, we're willing to sign it.
Yes, so should we go, maybe, if we could, maybe we'll just jump into the Conservation Commission comments and may address any, any concerns you have. If it doesn't, we can come back. But should we go down? Steve, you have some comments, Commissioner?
John, in looking at these 2 lists, is it your understanding that a single type contractor could address all of the issues that are on these 2 lists? Because I'm concerned about, the process at this point. How does this physically get done? And I'm wondering, in your opinion, and I know you have a lot of experience, it seems like for instance, PJ Hayes, who did the underground infiltration, could they address all of these issues that are listed in the agreement and the punch list? I'm doing this for the benefit of the audience too, so they know how this is going to get done.
PJ Hayes isn't going to do the pavement, he would subcontract that.
Right.
I mean, he could do it, but he's going to subcontract out different parts of it. He might or might not do the wall, he might subcontract that out.
Because I think that
I think it is, that's the type of contract.
Any agreement that I'd be willing to sign, I'd want to sort of have something in it that says that Mr. Musto has contracted with X contracting to complete whatever we end up describing in that agreement, and that as part of that agreement, he has an agreement with this other guy. So everybody knows, and it's, when they raise their shade up, they're going to see X corporation working there. And then we could bifurcate, that contract would then be able to bifurcate the timeline, because that contract would say, initiation of work to be such and such a date, and you could ask that contractor to do that. So as the planning board said, we could get that done and leave the stabilization for later. I think that would give a lot of comfort to me, anyways, and possibly to the folks in both boards. Does that seem logical?
Well, it seems logical. What I'm thinking is that, Ed does a lot, or can do a lot of this stuff himself. He has machines there, putting that infiltration trench in, doing some of the other work, I think is something that he probably would prefer to do himself.
I think, not sure what the right creature in the room is to refer to, but it ain't happened yet. I think we're going to set up an agreement that says it's got to be done by some date certain, and we'll levy fines, and just hope that works, and if it doesn't, then it has to go to the next step. But I think we're all on the same page. We want to see it get done. I think there's a lot of skepticism, maybe even cynicism, that Mr. Musto alone can get it all done in a timely way. He's not been able to do so to date, even with numerous projects and coaxings and suggestions. So I think this is great, as a first step in trying to make that happen, and I would hope that it would. Yes? No.
So I just have one comment on the new proposal of the agreement that you have, and I would encourage us to further consider the date of potential fines if not completed by September 28th. I am not personally comfortable with starting the fines on September 28th. I think to be backdated.
Can I just let the commission know that a town decision has been made to impose fines. The fines have begun to be imposed beginning on April 1st. So the order of conditions expired some time ago. There was an opportunity for Mr. Musto to sign an agreement when you last met. That did not happen, and we stopped waiting for that to happen, so the fines have begun. If you do eventually sign an agreement, you can agree to waive those fees if the work is completed by a certain date, but the fees have begun to be assessed. $300 a day, beginning last Sunday.
Under the Wetlands Protection Act?
They're under the failure to abide by the issued order of conditions under the bylaw.
Charlie, yes, I have a couple of issues. Councilman invited on and want that to be permeable in the center. A solution would be just to excavate it down and to put an speculative river stone in there, and then they could put seasonal planters in there. In the wintertime, they can be taken out. Simple solution. The baby pool that's been beat to death, it's done here. The residents don't want it, nobody wants it, that's a wash. I had a small concern on that retaining wall. If you're dealing with a square unit, trying to make a square unit into a bed, it's physically impossible. If you do decide you want to tap more into that hill, coming closer to the houses, what you have to do is you have to do a straight angle. You can't do a bend because each secondary block starts on top of each other. So there's limitations of what can actually be done on the block. And if you look at the other block, you can't make a square block do a bend. Very, very hard to do. And I feel if it goes up into goes to a public hearing, it's just going to slow things down. The final issue that I have on this is I've been in the construction industry for about 45 years. Everything has a sequence that has to be done. Things take time. You can't line up one person without the other person. And Mr. Musko's in business. He needs to, if he can achieve the goal and reach the deadline, get everything done, that's what everybody wants. I do great in plant science. The reality is, if you both put in a lawn, and if the lawn dries out once, you lose 30%, twice 60%. The ideal window to put in the lawn is August 15th to September 15th. We should have a deadline that the lawn has to be sown by September 1st. So that would be the window. If you go to put the lawn in prior, you're going to have nothing but weed growth and nobody's going to be happy. You want to expedite it, and on the other hand, you want a good product. And, Mother Nature says August 15th to September 15th, and that's the guideline that you have to abide by if you want a proper delivery of a product. And that would be my opinion based on those three issues that seems to be slowing everybody up. I'm just looking at it from a conservation standpoint, our responsibility, what we need to do with that, and other than that meets all our criteria, I believe, from the Conservation Act. Thank you very much.
So again, Mr. Chairman, we don't have a problem with breaking up the completion date into 2 dates. And the other thing, Charlie, are you going to be there Saturday by any chance?
I will be there Saturday.
Good.
Yeah, I think when we're out on the site, we can sort of go through the issues of corners or certainly what radius might be feasible. And talk to some of the homeowners there to make sure that you understand what the decision is, what the limitations are. We all have to sort of live with the existing system. A couple things I would say that we need to work through the agreement a little more completely. I see some language in here that isn't quite right. Maybe I'll just mention a couple of those things. Again, we have these sort of 2 lists of punch list items. You know, one is this lettered A through M. We have this one 1 through 20. There are some common items, some are worded differently. It's a little confusing to me. I think we need to straighten out that confusion. And then we have items that we've received from the homeowners. I think most of which in my perusal are addressed in these lists. You know, and so I think we can get most of these. We did go to some pains to describe to the homeowners before that some of the issues that are out there are sort of stuff that we can't address. They probably have, you know, something to do with what was under our jurisdiction in issuing your conditions. There's probably nothing that we can affect at this point in any significant way, in any assured way. I'm talking mostly about water and basements. There is the ability to, and I was out there this afternoon with pouring rain, and it's real clear there's surface water problems out there that probably contribute to that. It can be
fixed. Not entirely, but they can be, those issues can be reduced. There's a photograph right there. I walked right through that puddle and, you know, so have some sense. So, and then that's between all the units and across a lot of the backyards and some of the front yards as well. But some of that can be, you know, addressed, some of the surface runoff. But there's other items that go inside the units that's entirely outside of our, I think, our ability to fully address, if addressed at all. So, you know, I'm not sure where that's going to take all of this, but I think our commitment is to see that the site plan, the site elements get done and done right, and as quickly as possible right. My sense is that all of that work can get done on the order of less than 2 months' time, and that setting a deadline for the substantial completion, short of the vegetation that we've talked about, could be all done in 2 months' time, and we should, I don't think I want to even see that, but that's somewhere else. Is that the site?
Yeah, that's our house, that's our driveway. Down below.
Yeah. So, so, you know, we've got to rework this agreement to try to you know, get it as sort of detailed as we can and include language as I've marked up in this one agreements list. The last item says any and all work shown in the plans. Well, I think that should cut down to such other work that is required to render the project in substantial compliance with the expired order of conditions, which is to say, what's shown in the plans and in our conditions that say how the work should get done, should have already gotten done, so that we can all feel like we've done that part of that part of the plan, or I should say, the developer has finished the work that they received the permit for completing some time ago. And anyway, I think that's, to me, where we are. And I am willing to have a discussion with the commissioners as to what language we want to include for substantial completion being completed, say within 2 months. And our consideration then of reducing the fund with consultation with staff, and getting that inserted as well as the substantial completion date of vegetative stabilization plants are alive and across the site. As shown again, as shown on the plan. Just, yeah, any comments, questions on that? Seems like we're all on the same page there, so it's just a matter of reworking this. I think the intent is still the same as what you've got in here, John. I think it's just playing it up a little bit, getting some consistency.
I said, Mr. Chairman, somebody had to draw up something,
okay.
you know.
But John, do you have this other list from the neighbors?
No, I don't have that list. If I did have that list, I would have incorporated anything in there into.
It's posted.
Well, we'll get you a copy.
Yeah, so Karen can get you that information, right? And you'll give you a hard copy of it.
And could we get a copy of that?
Yes, I think, well, you could, but frankly, it needs some work. But yeah,
Do you think,
excuse me, Mr.
You would be
Chairman.
able to get one on it. Oh, okay. Before anything is agreed upon between the board, we still have to tweak it a little bit. So it isn't that we don't want to give it to you, it's not.
John, do you think you could go through everything and for the walk on Saturday have, because some of this is just similar and some stuff is, but they just put it together in a rough draft and then we could tweak it before the meeting next week?
Sure.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. I mean, it was a function of, I wrote the agreement. Is that a week and a half? I submitted.
Looks like an engineer.
I submitted it on March 21st. And then at our last meeting, you asked about punch list, so I just did a punch list. I didn't think about taking the other stuff out. So that's why it's sort of, yeah, but I can do my best to fix it.
And yeah, so part of,
Yeah, but we also would want to have town council reviews to make sure that we've captured what we need in the state of things.
We have, let's see, so I think we're talking about continuing this to the site visit on Saturday. We were talking about our next scheduled meeting being next Wednesday. Two of the members can't be there, the chair and the vice chair. And I've heard of another member that may not be able to be there on the 11th. And it does seem like there's some issues to get worked through on an agreement, on council review. So I'm wondering if members of the commission should be talking about meeting next to discuss this. The following Wednesday, which would be the 18th of April, or do we go the week after that, which would be our morning?
That's cool.
Oh, that is school vacation. I will be here. I'm available that night. Okay, so we lost two members. Yeah. So, I'd like to frankly get to it as soon as we can, and if we can have a quorum on the 18th, so maybe we'll just make doubly sure that we're going to have at least one more member available, and so we've got a quorum. Okay. So anyway, so why don't we just say look for somebody to make a motion to continue to Saturday and then to the 18th for the following.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay. We have a second? I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And we have enough time to post. That's a great point. Okay. So with that, I think we're done for tonight. We will have a meeting, like we said, we're doing the sidewalk on Saturday. We'll have a meeting on the 18th.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, we didn't.
Yes, yes. So why don't we then throw it open to questions from the audience? If you just, for your name and address, please.
Mike Cohen, I'm number 41.
Okay.
We have some people here from other neighbors that butters that are new. Okay. And this area here mainly concerns them. This picture here, which is the tie-in opposite Stanford Drive.
Do you want me to address these pictures if they're up?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to have one person talking at a time.
Yeah, and these are their pictures, so maybe they should let you know what's going on.
So yeah, it was mentioned that the date was before the infiltration system was put in place, which is the majority of the stormwater system on the hill is. So
My name is Shauna Holden.
Okay.
I'm at 1581 High Street.
Okay.
So yeah, this is our driveway. So, I mean, if you wanted to go back to the beginning of these pictures, let me see. That was November 24th, 2017, was when he started this work. That was November 24th, 2017, and it's still a mess. You know, the next picture I show is January 13th, 2018, where the driveway is flooded out. Oh, and actually, just to go back to that first picture, as you can see the little caterpillar, whatever it is, it's, you know, right there. That was placed there with no easement was granted. Mr. Musto drove that right over our driveway. And I only point that out because the day on the next picture, the 13th, when this happened, this was at 7 in the morning on a Saturday, we actually called the police department because, as you can see, the water level is in the middle of High Street and there are cars coming either direction and, you know, head-on collision. That's what we were concerned with. So that was the picture that morning. So that's halfway up our driveway. There's all the debris. I mean, all of that stuff up the driveway. And this is just January. There was another picture from December, but I mean, it's the same idea. Mr. Musto did, you know, he came and he took, so at that point, the holes were covered with metal plates. That's why the water just sat there. So that stuff had sat there for at least a month. I mean, metal plates covering these holes. So with the water with nowhere to go. He did come and clean the debris off the driveway, but basically they just swept it back into the crater. So now every time the water comes up, we just get all of this back up in our driveway and on our property. Next picture is February 21st, where you can plainly see the catch basin is closer to the house rather than on the edge of the street. I mean, you can plainly see it's higher than the ground level. So, you know, and next picture you can see, because this has been like this since November of 2017, this is how it looks every day when it either rains or things melt. And now our driveway, and by the way, this project started, he cleared the land in July of 2012. So we're going to be going on 6 years. 6 years for us and all of our neighbors that have been in an active construction zone. So this driveway we put in 2012, and now the driveway, because the soil is eroding out from underneath it, the driveway is now cracking and buckling. Not to mention that also happened to be where he had the large machinery on our driveway without our, you know, consent or permission, where we did tell him not to put it on the driveway, and I believe he still, the second time, just, you know, thought it would be okay to go back on our driveway, where we came out and told him to get off the property. And I'm sorry, I'm sure you can understand, like, we're frustrated. We're frustrated with this, and you're talking about this time, you know, a time period in September. It's been 6 years, like 6 years. This started in November. Like, why isn't this done? Why has this not been finished? Why hasn't this been, you know, monitored by the town? We don't understand it. We don't get it. It's, you know, and you can see the next pictures. It's just more of the same. So the next pictures that are on here, those are as of March 30th. This is the day when I got the email. I went out and took these pictures. So you can see this is how it looks right now, except actually today it was full of water again because of the rain. So that is the current condition. Also where the pylons are, there is a huge pothole that since November, the town has filled 3 times because it keeps emptying out, because it keeps filling with the pooled water that sits there. So just more money the town's spending than it doesn't need to. And then we got to the second part, which it's just the current conditions. So this is, you know, this is in front of our house. It looks terrible. I mean, it looks horrible. And just the next set of pictures that are up here, again, you know, the mailbox, they moved our mailbox, just arbitrarily shoved it back in the ground. So now there it is, leaning over like that. This next picture on the side, that's the view down towards the development. So, you know, that's all rock, dirt, trash that's just sitting there. That's been like that since November. And it's just more of the pictures. You know, and then you have the end of our driveway, where Mr. Musto told us it was going to be a slit. And now we have just this big thing across the driveway that's been there since November. And just so you know, all the gravel and fill that was put in there has now just been spread all across our front property because it's been there since November and we've had snow and rain. So the next pictures are the view from our backyard. This top picture is basically standing at our back fence. So all of that is the hill going up to the infiltration basin. It's all weeds, it's thorns, and let's see, the little pine tree. There's like 3 or 4 trees right behind our house, but that's it. We have no screening, nothing. We have nothing at all. Those trees weren't planted until 2016. And I know for a fact, because I was in my backyard, 2 of the trees when he planted them were dead. Because I heard the kid say to him, these are dead, and didn't matter, still put them in. So this presents another problem, mostly because in the summer, when everything's dry and hot, this dirt flies all over into our backyard, into our swimming pool, all over our house. Nothing's been done about this since 2012. Also, because now there's the cul-de-sac behind us, and I understand that the residents need to have lighting. However, at night, because there's no screening, all that light now shines on the back of our house into our bedrooms, also with any headlights of anybody that drives through there. Because there's, 3 dead trees and 3 half-dead trees. And the pictures down here, just more, there's a dead tree. That circle, that's another dead tree. This is the rim of the infiltration basin, which again, nothing against the residents, but a lot of times the residents will, walk up there or walk their dogs up there, and they're literally 10 feet from our backyard. Nothing against you guys, I understand. But, no screening, nothing. And then just the last picture in this is the infiltration basin. And this is just so that you can understand that those circles, that's dirt that we watched when they were working on the project in March. Oh no, it wasn't a tumble down, it was the front end loader over the edge into that infiltration basin. So that's going to sit there, that's also going to dry out, and we're going to have to deal with all the dust and all the other issues that we've been dealing with for 5.5 years. So that's the end of the pictures. I also just submitted something else tonight. I believe you guys, you should have a copy. So this is the original plan, the approved plans. Everything that's in the pink was, we had a private land surveyor come today and run the lines for us. So on the approved plan, you can see that where the catch basin and the manhole cover are absolutely different than where they actually have been placed. You can see, so the first square where it says approved placement, and there's a measurement 204.82, that is the storm drain. That's the storm drain that is sitting on our driveway, and all the land is washing out because the water sits there. Right in front of that is the manhole cover, which is at 205.02. And it's kind of hard to see, but right below that, there's a measurement 204.76. That's the height of the street. So the storm drain and the manhole cover are both higher than the street level. So the water just sits there and goes nowhere. On the approved plan, I think you can notice it's kind of in the bottom square where the storm drain was supposed to be put, and actually where in reality it was placed. Also, the manhole also seems to be, according to this plan, to be put where our mailbox got shoved in the ground, but instead is now right there on the street. So I guess that's a question that we have is, why wasn't this done according to the approved plans? And I don't claim to know construction, I don't. And again, this is 6 years of frustration coming out. But I guess I'm also curious as to why this hasn't been monitored, and why, they're talking about putting a date for September. Well,
part of the reason we set that date was for some of the reasons we discussed.
I know, and I understand that, but just this part, just the sewage, was November, and it's April, and nothing was done for months. It sat like that. And I guess I just don't have any faith, because you're talking about, finding him. I don't understand why he hasn't been fined earlier than this. After speaking with the town administrator, he did inform me that he should have been fined earlier, that the Conservation Commission is responsible for fining, and it hasn't been done. So I guess I would request that if you are going to fine him much earlier than April 1st. The other thing I have to say, nothing has been done in this project in a timely fashion. And again, I don't claim to know construction, but 6 years. 6 years. We've been living this for 6 years. 6 years. So thank you for letting me get this all off my chest. And thank you for, looking at these pictures and maybe just understanding a little bit better what, you know, at least the people that live on High Street have been dealing with for 6 years, why we're so frustrated, and why we just want this done, and why we really don't have any faith that this is going to be done in a timely fashion, because 6 years, nothing's been done in a timely fashion.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
And, I feel terrible that we've been living with this for so long, and frankly, that we've only recognized recently that we could have, should have, would have done more if we had known more earlier, and frankly, been paying attention. So I think it goes to the Conservation Commission, it goes to town staff, DPW, and I frankly cannot understand how, we haven't been sort of better informed that, by the way, there's something really going on out there, and we all probably need to put our heads together to figure out how to get this addressed. So, I'm frankly ashamed, and I think it is shameful. I think and it's been atrocious for a long time, and we try to be, frankly, good stewards of the work that comes under our jurisdiction. This one has completely gotten away from us and everybody else. And I think that's absurd. We do have at the top of our agenda, as a reminder to the commissioners, what have people seen around town? And we only put that on the agenda probably last year. This, I think, gives us real food for thought and a point of emphasis for when we're out looking at sites, where people make us aware of what they've seen around town. We take it seriously, and that we get on it. And if it's not ours, DPW's or building department, building plan approvals, that they address it. So, I think there's something broken, and it's showing up at the end of your driveway in a very significant way. This is particularly good information to have. It's not uncommon to have drainage structures not located in exactly the place that they're shown. They should be, but sometimes there are things that happen that move things around. This is pretty bad. The pictures are even worse. So it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. But having said all that, we're here where we are. We're going to do everything we can. I guess I would look to city staff or town staff to pull together the resources they need to make sure that we have the full weight of the rest of the town to make something happen here. I guess we have limited ability to have an agreement and force fines. By the way, the fines are limited by state law, $300 a day, maximum up to $25,000 in total.
Is that per?
No.
Per violation?
It's not per violation, it is per project site. I can't remember the exact language. We've looked into that a fair amount, and it looks like that's hard and fast. But there may be other measures. There may be, I would like to think that we'll write something up that sounds like the intention is good, that it's strong enough that their financial supporters agree that something needs to be done. They're at risk if they don't make sure that something happens. They turn it over to somebody who does this kind of work and knocks it out and gets it done right the first time. So I'm hopeful that that's going to happen. I don't know what more we can do, and I guess I turn it over to you, Dawn.
Sure. So what I want to make everyone aware of is that this project has been a nightmare from the beginning. The planning board has been updated by staff on the conditions, and the special permit does not have a time frame. We've discussed this on a monthly basis for over 2 years in land use committee meetings that all staff from the land use departments, the conservation department, DPW attend, as well as planning. We have discussed options of what to do. The land use committee learned in October that the order of conditions had expired in June. That was the first time we heard this, despite the fact that we discussed this on a monthly basis and have done that constantly. In each discussion, we have looked for ways that we could address this. We couldn't do it under the planning board approval because the special permit did not have a time frame. Once the project began, there was no time frame under which it had to be completed. Public Works looked at it from the tie-in for their drainage system and was very concerned and spoke to Mr. Musto several times about having the drainage work completed. It was actually in those discussions with Public Works about the drainage work being completed that we discovered, that Karen discovered, that the order of conditions had expired. At that time, in October, we asked that fines be imposed beginning then because the order of conditions had expired. And the report back to us was that the Conservation Commission wanted to speak to Mr. Musto and see if they could encourage the work to be done. We continued along that process throughout the winter, and when we got to your last meeting, we had Town Council draft an agreement that we thought was more appropriate than the agreement that was offered by Mr. Vasa, and that was presented to you last week. When that was not signed, the administration made a decision that they could no longer wait for the Conservation Commission to impose fines, and so they would order staff to impose those fines under the bylaw. So that's been done. It took a long time to get to that point, but we're at that point now, and the fines have started. So whether the Commission chooses to sign an agreement with Mr. Musto or not, those fines will continue, and the administration is causing those fines to go forward. So I understand that there are a lot of hands in this, and we all have different authorization for what we can do, but the decision was finally made that the administration would require those fines. And that's where we stand now. Public Works does need to inspect the connections that are made with the drainage. When work is done without requesting inspections, there's no one on staff that's out there watching the work be done. What Public Works requires is that their town engineer, which is a consultant hired through Beta, be given notice of when work is being done so that they can be on site. They also require an as-built plan that would be compared to the approved plans. When the work is complete, we'll see that as-built plan, and clearly we'll see that it doesn't line up with what was required. If the drainage structures are not working properly, they will have to be removed and replaced. From a planning perspective, the approvals are done when the project is complete. The landscaping will be looked at. That view of the screening that was supposed to be there, that has not been there, that has been an argument we've had for going on 3 years now. We had asked that those plans be put in place before the first structure was completed, then asked that they be placed before the last structure was completed, and the plans still aren't there. So, we use the teeth that we have. Unfortunately, from the planning perspective, we don't have much in the way of teeth, but you as the Conservation Commission do. You have an expired order of conditions, and you've got an opportunity to require this work to be done. So that's the point we're at now. You have more authority than anyone else. Public Works can begin to fine Mr. Musto if the drainage problems are being further exacerbated by the failure to complete work and by any incomplete tie-ins to the structure. So they will need to send their engineer out and look at that, and I will call Todd Fortune first thing tomorrow and ask that he set that up, and ask that he have the engineer request an as-built plan to date, not wait until the project is finished.
Nora, on a planning board matter, this looks like a site distance easement. Has that been cleared out and instructed?
We do not have confirmation that the site distance is everything that it should be, because the area has not been stabilized. So we're waiting for that work to be completed. Clearly, the grade was cut back on the neighbor's property, so Mr. Musto did, I believe, obtain an easement across that land. I haven't myself seen a signed copy, but I know that the land was cut back. We need to get an engineer out there when the work is complete to measure the site distance.
You want me to give you a heads up on that?
Sure.
I measured it this morning. It's 314 feet with the curvature, not on a straight line. So a straight line is going to be probably under 300 feet.
And it's supposed to be 400.
And it's supposed to be 400 on the plan.
And so, as I said, we're withholding inspections. We're withholding a certificate of occupancy. That's the only thing we can do at this moment from the planning end. And none of that will be issued until everything in the plan is complete, till all landscaping is done, site work is done, finished pavement, and until the site distance is confirmed.
So, Nora, is the planning board holding any money for the building of the road or anything?
No, so there is no road here. This is a private driveway. This is not a subdivision. This is a single lot where the units are condominiumized, and there is no public infrastructure there. So there was no ability for the town, under the current bylaw, the bylaw that this was developed under, the senior residential development bylaw, did not have a provision that allowed you to take a bond or require a passbook account or tripartite agreement. So none of that was done. We have since deleted that section of the bylaw and written another section, our open space residential development bylaw, that will guide all future developments so that this does not happen again.
Helen, good.
Yes, I just had a question, or at the beginning of this conversation when we were talking about the proposed agreement that Mr. Glass had put together, you made a comment of a recommendation for us not to sign.
That's right.
Is specifically not to sign this particular one or not to sign anyone?
Not to sign that particular one. So that one very similar to that with a different date was presented before your last meeting, and we had town council look at it, and they said it was not, would not put the town in the best perspective. If you were to sign that, you would actually be giving up control. And so they gave you a revised document that they recommended you sign. It sounds like you probably need to add to Mike Terry's document that Tom McCusker was out of town. Mike Terry worked with him. You start at that point and then add in anything else you need, punch lists, whatever you want added to that, but do not start from Mr. Glass's document.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to speak.
Okay.
I don't know which one you're looking. I'm interested in pictures. And there's a few there on that high
Same
school.
location.
In what Sean was saying, isn't anyone concerned that they just leave it like that?
Oh,
It's left like that.
No,
I mean, you're
yeah,
aware
right.
of it. It's unbelievable.
No, it is. It is.
I mean, but you're making it sound like there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he opened up driveways. Are you supposed to get permits for that? Can you just open up the street without any permits? Nobody?
Does Westwood require street opening permits?
If it's in the street, yes. If it's
Yeah.
in our
Oh, I see, but
driveway,
it's in-
no.
No, but the.
So you just cut across a personal driveway and?
Not without the property owner's permission.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but the town does not require
Oh,
permission to
okay.
open private driveway.
But, so the catch basins in front of 1581, while not in the street itself, or immediately adjacent to it.
They're in the right of way.
That is in the right of way, exactly. Does that require street opening permit?
It does not require a street opening permit, but it requires notification to the Department of Public Works that the work was going to be performed so that the town engineer could be on site to inspect the work and ensure that it was performed properly.
So it speaks to, a couple things. I wonder if Mr. Musto's been aware of that and notifying in advance. It does sound like the work was done very much sort of on an ad hoc basis, and if done at all. So that's an issue, having a little more clarity around that, so the Conservation Commission knows what its responsibilities might be. As I've had the occasion to with you, Nora, in the past, and surprised once again. So this is some lots of new information, very frustrating for me as well to have seen it continue. And it does seem like there's an opportunity now to sort of get acts together, particularly on the builders. This is quite extraordinary. There are not many projects that would get this bad for this long, regardless of who's paying attention or not paying attention or doing their job or have processes in place.
But why does it let?
Exactly. It's pretty extraordinary on a number of counts.
So can you advise us what we do for Shauna and the people down on 109? It's an eyesore.
I think we're looking for staff to try and help us determine what that is, and we as the commission are, I guess in a position, a unique position to help in helping, but we can't get it done.
I can't imagine any other town allowing that. I mean, it looks like an eyesore. It's, everyone's looking at it, driving by. It is such an eyesore, and it's like nobody can do anything.
No.
It's unbelievable.
So
he opened up the driveways in violation, and it doesn't sound like it's a big deal.
No,
he's aware now. He's a builder. He's been a builder for.
That's a big deal. And those other photographs.
It's unbelievable. And all that water there would not be there if the drains were in up in Reynolds Farm.
Exactly.
Well, do we know they're not there? Can we go back to the plan of the manholes?
Yeah, this one?
Yeah. So, do I have a pointer or something?
Yes.
So right on the plan, there are catch basins 4 and 4A right here. It's supposed to be catching all the runoff from the wetlands that do make it through our yard. They're not there. They are not there. I mean, do people not know this?
I thought I did see it.
They're not there. So all the water now, all the storm water, gets by those two double catch basins here, goes down here. There's another catch basin down here, right here. That's not there either. So everything comes down, all the runoff comes down here and goes down here and ends up in front of Sean's. I mean, if they're not there, this is conservation stuff. This is all coming from wetlands.
Yeah, so it does remind me, one of the items we talked about was inspections of the drainage system, wanting to make sure it's where it's.
Right, exactly.
Overall structures are there, their precise locations is also now an issue like.
They're not, there's so many of them that aren't up there. It's not just those two, those three. You have like manholes like that one there's not there. Where it is, who knows, but it's not the street there. You have
So this, one of the conditions we did have was an as-built plan that we would actually locate those by survey, their elevations. I've suggested we also do some level of testing to make sure that they flow up to down.
I heard that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys go out there and you don't even know they're not there. You got plans.
Yeah, no, and I've not done a detailed assessment of all this out. So
I mean, we're like the first senior residential development, and we have to like run the show out there. I mean, come on, you guys.
No, I got you.
You gotta be kidding me. And there's so many other things. I mean, the sewer, which is not on.
If I could, it's getting late,
Well, wait a minute though. The sewer, okay? You have a sewer manhole down here. If it's not on this plan, okay? There's supposed to be multiple ones up here, say four of them.
Yeah.
They're not there. There's no sewer. There's one up there, period. There's supposed to be another one right over here, not there. You have one right there. I mean, a normal development, is that okay? I don't know. Maybe these things are overkill on the plan.
No, they're all there. So, my time they bury because they have to come, they have to plow, they have to run their machines. They're all
So they're there?
Believe me, they're all there.
Okay, is that right?
They're all there.
Oh, wait a minute.
So now let's.
You put them in.
Okay. Whoa.
They're all
Yo, hello.
They're all there. Hello. They might be there.
All comments. All comments. Any comments? Okay. It's late. I think we're rehashing issues.
No, are we really?
No, I think we.
I have one quick.
It has to be you, please.
It's just a commentary, a quick commentary. We're not just worried about all of the work that hasn't even begun yet, which there's a lot of. We're worried about the work that is done improperly.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And we're also worried about about the work that may have been done properly but not finished. That retaining wall has not been extended to where the site plan showed it was able to be extended to. The site, the line of sight was half done and not completed. So I mean,
I hear what you're saying. I think it is the same of the same issue, which is that the work gets completed.
Yeah.
It's completed correctly and
according to the site.
Yeah, and qualitatively, it gets done right. And I think we all have concerns about it at a number of levels, including burying sewer manhole covers.
first I've been made aware of it as I think about it. I don't remember seeing them out there either, and now I know why, that's kind of weird. Nothing else, that's weird. So,
and
anyway.
I won't accuse anybody anymore, I apologize.
Yeah, no,
But making all these things that you're suggesting that Mr. Musto has to do, they do sound like kind of benign, you know what I mean? It doesn't sound like a big, there are big projects out here that have to be done.
Yeah.
That detention trench, there's a lot of work in there. We've hired an engineering firm to go out and tell us what it needs. It's not a simple thing. Ed can't do it. He's not going to get that done by September.
I think that
he's got to sub it out.
Yeah.
Hayes could do it. PJ Hayes could do it.
I think that list is really helpful qualitatively about that.
So did you get the engineering report too?
Yes.
Can you please read that?
Yeah.
Yes, because there is a lot of major things. It's not a simple thing that's going to get done. You know, because when you went over it, it did sound simple, but we just have to do that. Well, I mean, the plantings, the grass can't be planted till September, whatever, August. We got a zillion bushes and trees that got to go in.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep. So if we could, just one more comment from the commissioner, and then sort of a question.
So, I'm fairly new on the commission. I think at the last meeting, we made it very clear how upset we were as a commission about what was going on.
You would think that would be a fire under something.
Please let me finish.
Okay.
And so I assure you that we're not taking any of this lightly. And we will do whatever we can within the limits of our powers to assist you. I unfortunately am not going to be able to be out at the site on Saturday. I will go out there prior to, and I cannot make the next meeting. I will make my comments known to the chair.
And I can walk you through any time you like.
I appreciate that.
All right, so if we could, I think, let's...
But can I rebut to that? And I appreciate you.
I don't know
your
that
words. And I just want to say that Mr. Musto, we've seen him out there for one full day yesterday. One full day.
And that
was yesterday.
Right. And I happened to swing by, I think it was yesterday, and what wasn't there, but that was much later in the day. Anyway, okay, so, I don't know if we have to do anything more. I think we already made a motion and seconded for continuing.
Could the planning board come to the site visit on?
They're welcome to join us.
Yeah.
I think they have issues of quorum.
The planning board join the conservation committee Saturday morning.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you all. Thank you.
Question on the water that I was talking about last time in number 11.
Okay.
You say that's not part of the commission, and I understand that. Who is responsible for that?
So normal.
So number 11 is the incomplete unit, which cannot be inspected and it cannot be completed until the other work is done. So number 11 is an unfinished unit, and when it is finished, it will have to be brought up to standards. If there's water damage in that unit, then that will need to be corrected. I encourage the commission to choose as soon a date for any agreement that you sign, so that we can be sure that that work can be taken care of before mold sets in.
Well, it's been going on.
As I said, I understand, and as I said, the only leverage that the planning board has is to withhold that last certificate of occupancy. That's the only power they have. They do not have authority to go on private property and require work to be done, but they can not allow a certificate of occupancy to be issued and not allow inspections to go forward until the work gets done. So that's the only thing we can do. But the Conservation Commission is in a unique position because they have an expired order. So they have someone who is in violation of their decision, and they have the ability to force action. And they force that action by applying fines or by agreeing to allow work to go forward, which may be an inducement to the developer to get the work done. And then Public Works, their only jurisdiction occurs in the public way, where the utilities are connected, public utilities. So the catch basins and sewer lines that are in Reynolds Way are not under the jurisdiction of the Public Works Department. There's nothing they can do about those either. So
that's conservation.
Conservation is the only one that has the authority right
now to act. Planning board has to wait. Public Works can address work that was done in the right of way incorrectly, but they can't address work that was done on the center.
All right, thank you everyone for being here.
Oh, I'm sorry, so this adjourns the Conservation Commission meeting. Thank you.
We have one other planning board item.
You lucky dogs, you.
Is there anyone here from Chief High Street?
No, they're not. After your last meeting, if you recall, Chief High Street was on, they still had some outstanding questions related to the affordable housing, so I just wanted to pose your interest to see if 2 members were interested in serving on the subcommittee, or option number 1, I don't remember.
215
I'm sorry, last time, the, yes, the housing table, and the proposed next in senior housing. So they were wondering if any more feedback regarding the affordable housing aspect, or if 2 members are interested in serving on a subcommittee to meet outside of a public meeting. It can't be more than 2 members. Do you have any input right now?
So yeah, there's a couple of things also. So this is like to approve an alternative to the 3 units being on site. We should be in consultation with the housing authority, whatever. So actually, housing authority is meeting on Monday. I'm on the housing authority. And so what I thought, maybe we could have a subcommittee of this group, and maybe a subcommittee of the housing authority. People who would need to discuss this with the committees would be okay. I'm interested. Who else is there?
I'll be interested in housing pattern.
Oh,
I think so. I think it would just be easiest for us to deal with.
I think maybe was Mike's interested, Dave's interested, I think Brian may be interested too. I'm wondering, I think.
You know what? I don't need to be part. I don't need to be part of that group. I do like the idea that this is a meeting on Monday. Like you were saying.
Yeah, there's a housing authority walk on Monday.
This Monday. So if you can bring that up, because my concern is that with this type of a project, with the percentage of affordable housing that's we require, they brought up the item where maybe there could be more units off-site if it's going to be a lower nominal value of investment. So it sounds like the applicant is saying that if it's greater than that, then it's then they're.
I think they were really concerned about more than the 3 units. So they know that the zoning requires the 15%, which is 3 units, but the suggestion towards 4 really makes the project not feasible for them. So they're not, after, with that suggestion, they're not looking to go forward unless there's some more guidance of what we'd be willing to entertain. You would still have to go through the special permit process and then be fully vetted, but they've asked for more guidance and feedback as they move further along.
See, the way I look at it is if they're going to do the affordable housing on site, and I understand the challenges with that because it's a 55 and over, but it would cost more to do it on site financially. So for this type of a project, should there be more units off-site where it would be potentially cheaper? Although they haven't even identified, it sounds like they may have 2 potential units identified on Washington.
Gay Street.
Gay Street.
Gay and Washington.
So I'd be curious to where's that 3rd unit going to come from. But I would also be interested to see what on Monday night what your meeting, Dave, that you're attending, what they would share with you.
I mean, it's the The requirement, well, the planning board can approve an alternative that at least meets the same need, or the exact word of that, meets the same need. Affordable housing needs of town. So I mean, one of those needs is to not, is to maintain the subsidized housing index, so that you can say, well, if there's supposed to be 3 units, here's 3 units need met. But it's the same issue that we had with the Islington development, and that you have sort of baseline requirement would be that there'd be 3 homes in this development, you know, like Cedar Hill, like Chase Estates, that there'd be 3 of the units would be affordable. And to take that and say, well, the equivalent is that we would get a duplex and another apartment somewhere in town, that will also, that'll meet the needs the same way. But it doesn't, to me, it meets the same number, but it's not meeting the same needs. It's typically a 1-bedroom apartment is not going to be, meet the needs of a family. A 2-bedroom house meets a different set of needs. So, and I think it's worth talking to them to understand kind of what the options there might be. And I can maybe understand that it might, just like to have that discussion. And probably it's better to have that discussion to not have it at a big hearing like this, because it's hard to really kind of get into it. So,
well, it's business. It's a negotiation. I'm not sure exactly how it's worded in the provision for the 15%. Does it have to be?
The default condition is it has to be 15% of the developed units, so on-site, but it gives an option for the planning board to approve any other arrangement that they feel is equivalent in meeting the needs, the affordable housing needs. It doesn't say that the planning board can require more units. And I think that's where we are right now. I think the developers were under the impression that the planning board would require more than 3 units, and have decided that the project is not economically feasible under those conditions. And so they
I'm worried about that direction. Is it in-kind units, same value,
that's up to
same
you to
size?
decide. You have to decide that whatever you would approve is equivalent in meeting the needs. So you have to determine what those needs are. It doesn't have to be the same number of bedrooms. It doesn't have to be ownership versus or rental, depending on what the development is. It doesn't have to be providing units. It could be providing funding to the Westwood Housing Authority or WAHA, which then they use to create units. So there are a lot of different options that the planning board can consider.
And it would be up to us to determine the amount of money.
Yes,
in that situation.
Yes, it would be.
And in the past, have we ever gone that route?
There has never been a project that's been approved that has had a financial contribution that under this bylaw. In the case of Reynolds Farm, that bylaw did not require any affordable housing, and the planning board had a condition in its decision requiring the developer to meet with the housing authority to come to terms of some reasonable proposal. Well, what came out of that discussion was a 1% of the cost, 1% of the funds received by the developer for the sale of units. So for a $600,000 property, WAHA got $6,000. So in the 12 units, some of them were less than 600, so in the 12 units in the end, they will come up with about, I think it's about $68,000 that they will have for that entire project. Not enough to rent an affordable unit, much less construct one. So that's not acceptable. So since that time, the bylaw was revised, and all special permit housing now has the 15% requirement, and the default is that it's 15% of the units that are produced. But you do have the authority to approve something else. So in this case, because the restricting 15% of those units, taking 3 of the units, 2 of which would be for sale, well, they'd all be for sale, 2 of which would have been single-family units, and 1 would have been in the townhouses, is not economically feasible. They told you that those units would go from, I think, $1.2 to $1.4 million. If it's an affordable home, you can't sell it for more than $200,000. So that means they're taking a loss of over $1 million on each of those units. That does not allow the project to go forward, so they're looking for an alternative that they could still develop the project, and we could still obtain affordable affordable housing somewhere else in town. But then you need to have that discussion of what that affordable housing should be. So it would have been great if this was all hashed out at the pre-application hearing, but it was approaching midnight, and I think we were running out of time to have that discussion. So now we're at the point where the developers have withdrawn their offer on the property. So they no longer have a purchase and sales agreement with the Flanagans. They're still interested in pursuing it if they can come to some resolution that makes it make sense for them, that they can afford to do the project. But what they told Abby and me is that if they had to provide 4 units, they would no longer be able to afford to do the project. That's the position they're standing at today. And what you have to say is either, okay, then don't do the project, or you have to say that you can do the project for 3 units. That's the discussion that has to be had now. They need to know what it would cost them so they can put their performer together and decide if it's worth doing this project. And what you have to keep in mind, a couple of things. On the one hand, the town doesn't go out and search for opportunities for residential development. That's not something that is beneficial and profitable to the town. So commercial development is something we very much want to balance our town. Residential development, whether the land stays undeveloped or not, it's probably not that high a concern. However, in this case, you have a parcel that could be redeveloped by another entity, if not this one. It was proposed for a very high density development in the past. That didn't go through, but someone else could come back and propose the same. And the fact that the property right next to it is now on the market, a 5-acre parcel, to be added to that compounds the issue. So if you can see your way clear to consider a proposal that is more acceptable to the neighborhood, it's probably a better alternative to the next option down the line. But the board would have to satisfy itself that whatever alternative affordable housing component was proposed was something you could live with. So I think that's where you have to walk the line. You have to be reasonable, but also make sure that you're accepting something that's beneficial to the town.
So, my opinion is just option number 3 that they gave is not acceptable. We can't do option number 3 because that violates the principle in the bylaw that states that they have to be spread throughout the units and the proportion to the types of units. So option 3 is out.
So option 3, you could still accept, but you would have to accept it by saying that you found it equivalent in meeting the needs of the town. It is different than what the default position is. There's no doubt about the default position would require 2 of the single-family homes in 1 of the townhouses. You still could approve 3 of the townhouses, but you would have to do that in a way that you were convinced that that was equivalent. And if you're not convinced of that, then you can't go that way.
But I couldn't do that because that would violate what's clearly spelled out in the bylaw, that they can't be all lumped together, they can't be one type. When in the development, they have to be spread out. So I think we shouldn't do option number 3. I think it's at all appropriate. Option 1 and 2 are very similar. If they can, I would say option 1 is fine. If they want to move to buy a house that's available now, there's a 2-family, and work on where they're going to get the 3rd one later, that's not a problem. As far as do we do 3 or 4, I think it's reasonable for them to say at the price they're selling those homes, they couldn't do them on site because of what you said, which is the difference in prices. But you have to look at. But I don't see how they can say immediately that 4 would make it uneconomical because they don't know how much they could purchase them for. So how can they make that statement?
So I think they made that statement based on the fact that there is a single 2-family home on the market today. I think that's what they're looking at. There are no other 2-family homes in Westwood that are currently on the market. So they would have to be searching out property owners that are not offering their properties for sale and inducing them to sell it. And that inducement would cost them more.
But houses come on the market all the time. So they want, when the appropriate one could come on the market. They don't know that.
That's true, they don't know that, and what they're looking for is certainty before they spend the amount of money that it takes to get a proposal before this board for a special permit. So I think there's give and take on both sides, and you need to recognize that there's a cost to applying to the board for a special permit, and they don't want to undertake that cost like the last developer did who spent money hand over fist and never even got to a complete application and ended up withdrawing. They don't want to be in that same position. So that's why they requested a discussion with a non-voting, not a quorum, but a smaller group of planning board members to discuss how they could get to a point where they could see themselves clear to the goal.
I've given what we said, and I think that should be passed on to them. And then I think we should have that committee meet with them and work something out.
So do we need to vote on this?
Usually the chair can create the subcommittee, I guess. Dave is the acting chair tonight.
All right, so, Mike, you want to?
Absolutely.
All right, so I will appoint you and me to this subcommittee for working out a solution to this affordable housing for 215 High Street.
Does that conclude business with you?
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, wait, just minutes. Did you have any minutes? There's a lot. Did anyone
So I
get
don't know the first one, but January something.
Yeah.
Why did the second one still have edits in it?
Did it?
Yeah, the one you posted, had all sorts of red lines through it.
Oh.
So I'm not gonna approve that.
Why don't I suggest that, we're meeting, we have a lot to do there, but we could quickly approve the minutes.
It's just been a
It's
while.
been a long
It's
time,
mostly
bad to
minutes of
have
Tim.
minutes from January that aren't like finalized yet, so. Any other business? There's a motion to adjourn.
There was.
Motion to adjourn, is it seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.